Hi, I'm Serena. And for 10 years, I thought I was building a life with my husband, until the day he called me and said, "Pack your things and get out." Just like that. No warning, no explanation. But what hurt more than his words? The realization that our marriage had never been real. That everything, our home, our finances, even our love, had been nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. And when he told me to talk to his parents, I thought I'd finally get answers. Instead, I uncovered something so much bigger, a secret that turned my entire life upside down. How do you move forward when you realize you were never meant to win? When the people you trusted the most were the ones setting you up to fail? Because I didn't just lose a marriage, I lost the illusion of control. But what happened next? He never saw it coming. The phone buzzed in my hand, the cold metal pressing against my palm as I stared at the screen. Dorian Kane, my husband, the man I had shared my life with for nearly a decade. I hesitated before answering, something deep inside me whispering that whatever was coming next would change everything. His voice was devoid of warmth, stripped of any trace of the man I used to know. "I don't want to see you anymore. Pack your things and leave before I get home." The world around me blurred. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. A hollow silence stretched between us before the line went dead. I stood there, gripping the phone, trying to process the words that had just sliced through my life. My vision swam, a deep, nauseating pit forming in my stomach. This couldn't be happening. My hands trembled as I redialed, the screen flashing, calling. For an agonizing few seconds before going straight to voicemail, I tried again. Nothing. Panic settled in, wrapping its cold fingers around my throat. My chest tightened, and for a brief moment, I struggled to breathe. How had we gotten here? I slumped onto the couch, staring at the city lights flickering outside our floor-to-ceiling windows. This apartment, our home, suddenly felt like an unfamiliar space, walls closing in on me. The past few months flashed through my mind like a film reel, each memory a jagged piece of a puzzle I had refused to put together. Dorian had been distant, his touch growing colder, his gaze lingering elsewhere even when we were in the same room. The late-night meetings that ran longer than they should have. The phone calls he always dismissed when I was near. The sudden weekends away for business that had no paper trail. I had ignored the signs, convincing myself that work was pulling him away, that stress was making him distant. But now, staring at my reflection in the glass, I saw it for what it was. I had been a fool. Tears pricked at the edges of my eyes, but I swallowed them down. Crying wouldn't change the fact that my husband had just discarded me like I was nothing. The sharp knock at the door jolted me. I hesitated before rising, my legs unsteady as I crossed the room. When I opened the door, a man in a navy blue uniform stood there, holding a thick envelope. "Mrs. Kane?" The name felt foreign. "Yes," I whispered. "This is for you. Please sign here." With numb fingers, I scribbled my signature, barely processing what I was doing. The moment I closed the door, I tore open the envelope. A stack of crisp white papers slid into my hands. Divorce papers. My breath hitched as I flipped through the documents. His signature was already there, ink-dried, as if he had been waiting for this moment. He had planned this. This wasn't an argument that escalated too far. This was calculated, cold, premeditated. A deep anger flared in my chest, pushing back the heartbreak that threatened to consume me. And then I saw it. A single note, written in Dorian's familiar scrawl. "If you have questions, talk to my parents. They'll explain." My pulse pounded in my ears. His parents? They had never truly accepted me. I had been an outsider, tolerated but never embraced. And now I was supposed to go to them for answers? A bitter laugh escaped my lips. This had been orchestrated. I was the last to know. The realization hit me like a freight train. I wasn't just losing my husband. I had never really had him. My gaze swept across the apartment, lingering on the framed wedding photo on the console table. Dorian's arm was wrapped around me, his smile easy, effortless. A lie I had believed in. My fingers curled around the frame. The glass shattered as it hit the floor. My heart pounded, my breath ragged. But through the haze of pain, a single thought cut through like steel. I will not go down without answers. The long driveway stretched before me, lined with towering oaks whose golden leaves swayed in the crisp autumn breeze. The estate loomed ahead, as imposing as ever, silent, cold, a relic of power and control. I hadn't been here in over a year, and yet nothing had changed. Not the polished stone steps leading to the grand double doors. Not the scent of burning wood from the fireplace inside. Not the chill in my stomach that always accompanied visits to the Kine estate. I parked, gripping the steering wheel for a moment before stepping out. My heels clicked against the gravel as I approached the entrance, my breath visible in the crisp afternoon air. The door opened before I even knocked. Eleanor Kane stood there, elegant as always in a fitted cream-colored dress, her pearl earrings catching the light. Her smile was polite, but held no warmth. "We thought you might come sooner." Of course, they had been expecting me. Bernard Kane was already seated in the study, a glass of scotch in one hand, flipping through a newspaper, as if my presence was nothing more than an appointment on his calendar. He barely looked up. "Have a seat, Serena." No fake sympathy, no feigned concern. Just bored indifference, as if my life unraveling was nothing more than an inconvenience they had to address. I sat, back straight, hands resting in my lap. Why did Dorian send me here? My voice was even, but my fingers curled against my thighs. Bernard sipped his drink, finally glancing at me. "Because, my dear, this marriage was never about love." The words landed like a slap. Eleanor tilted her head slightly, watching for my reaction. When I didn't flinch, she reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder, sliding it across the mahogany surface. "You should read this." I hesitated, but then I saw it. My name, Serena Kane, printed in bold at the top of the document. My fingers were steady as I flipped it open. Prenuptial agreement. My heart pounded. I had never signed a prenuptial agreement. Yet, there it was. The clauses were brutal. If the marriage ended before 15 years, Dorian retained full control of all financial assets. If I initiated the divorce, I would walk away with nothing. If Dorian filed, I would get a minor settlement, but only under certain conditions. I flipped through the pages, my stomach twisting. I wasn't just being discarded. I had been trapped from the start. "I never signed this." Eleanor's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Dorian planned ahead, dear. We all did." I felt sick. This was a setup. My voice came out flat, but inside, I was burning. "Of course it was." Bernard's tone was dismissive, as if I should have known all along. "You were a suitable choice, Serena, but Dorian had other obligations." A suitable choice, not a partner, not a wife, just a piece in a carefully arranged game. I gritted my teeth, forcing my expression to remain unreadable. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Eleanor sipped her tea, watching me like a cat watching a trapped mouse. "You look surprised. But tell me, Serena, did you really think you were the first?" The air in the room seemed to thin. "What?" Bernard leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You weren't the first, and you won't be the last." It hit me then. This wasn't about love, or even convenience. This was what they did. Handpick a woman, marry her under false pretenses, keep her just long enough to serve a purpose, a merger, a business deal, an image to uphold. Then, when she was no longer useful, discard her, making sure she walked away with nothing. A cold rage settled in my chest. Eleanor set her teacup down. "We'll make this easy for you. Sign the papers, accept the settlement, walk away quietly." Bernard's voice was sharper. "There's no fight to win here, Serena. You're already out." I forced myself to stay still, to breathe, to process. I had walked into this house expecting to fight for my marriage. Instead, I had uncovered a machine designed to destroy women like me. But I wouldn't be the next casualty. I closed the folder carefully and placed it back on the desk. Then I stood, smoothing down the front of my coat, schooling my face into something unreadable. I met Eleanor's gaze, holding it steady. If Dorian planned ahead, then so will I. For the first time, her smirk faltered. Bernard watched me with something that almost resembled intrigue. I turned on my heel and walked out, stepping into the cold autumn air, gripping the prenup tightly in my hands. My breath was steady, my mind was sharp. I wasn't leaving this fight empty-handed. The rain had started by the time I reached my apartment. It wasn't heavy, just a slow, persistent drizzle that painted streaks across the glass windows, blurring the city skyline beyond. I dropped my coat onto the chair, my hands still clutching the prenuptial agreement. The paper felt heavier than it should, as if it carried the weight of every moment I had been deceived. I moved toward the kitchen, pouring myself a glass of wine with hands that didn't quite steady. The silence in the apartment was suffocating. It had always been too big, too immaculate, decorated to Dorian's taste more than mine. And now, it felt like I was standing in a stranger's home. I set the wine down and unfolded the prenup on the dining table. My eyes traced every clause, every loophole designed to strip me of power before I even knew I needed it. How had I not seen it? My mind drifted back through the past years, searching for the cracks I had ignored. Dorian always had the upper hand, always. The way he could steer any conversation, making me feel like I was imagining things when I questioned him. The way his parents gifted us vacations at the exact moments I had doubts, whisking us away just long enough for me to forget whatever had been nagging at me. And the documents, contracts, legal forms, slid in between normal paperwork. Just sign here, babe. It's standard. I had been a fool, not naive, not inexperienced, just unaware that I had married into a family that played by a different set of rules. I sank onto the couch, running a hand through my hair. There had to be more. And then, something clicked. I grabbed my laptop and opened my email. Scrolling through years of messages, I searched for something, anything, an old connection, a thread I had forgotten to pull. Then, I saw it. Nicholas Avery. His name had appeared in a conversation Dorian had once shut down immediately. A quick search led me to a series of financial articles from nearly a decade ago. Nicholas Avery, once a powerful businessman, had vanished from the public eye after a high-profile divorce from a woman with deep family ties. Something about the case felt too familiar. I hesitated only for a moment before pressing call. The phone rang twice before a voice answered. "Who is this?" "My name is Serena Kane," I said, "and I think we have something in common." There was silence. Then a sigh. "I was wondering when you'd call." A chill ran through me. "You know who I am?" "I know what you're going through," Nicholas said, "because I went through the same thing." I swallowed hard. "Tell me everything." Nicholas didn't rush. His tone was steady, but there was something beneath it. Exhaustion, bitterness, the weight of a man who had already lost. He had been in the exact same situation. A contract-bound marriage, carefully designed to pull him in, keep him in place just long enough to serve a purpose, then discard him when the time came. The same patterns, the same tricks. "And let me guess," I murmured. "She got everything. You got nothing." "Not just nothing," Nicholas said. "They erased me." He explained how his ex-wife's family had severed his business ties, turning former allies against him. How he had been forced out of his own company, financially ruined, reputation destroyed. All because he had been stupid enough to believe it was real. I gripped the phone tighter. "This is a cycle, isn't it?" "It's a machine, Serena." His voice was grim. "And now you're the latest casualty." I let the words sink in. I could feel the anger rising, not hot and reckless, but cold and sharp, settling into something dangerous. Nicholas exhaled. "Listen to me. If you think you can beat them, you need more than just anger." "I don't need anger," I said quietly. "I need strategy." He didn't respond immediately. Then he chuckled, dark and knowing. "Good." After the call, I sat motionless, the city lights flickering against the rain-soaked windows. I wasn't just another victim. I wasn't going to disappear. I grabbed a pen and a notebook, flipping to a blank page. And I started writing. A list of every legal loophole I could use. Every person still tied to Dorian that I could turn. Every move I could make before they even saw me coming. They had built this game for themselves. Let's see what happens when someone else plays it. The next morning, the sky hung heavy with gray clouds, a mirror of the cold certainty settling in my bones. I stepped into Hastings and Lowell L.P.L., one of Manhattan's most ruthless law firms. Elliot Marston, a corporate attorney who owed me a favor, was expecting me. "Serena," he greeted, leaning back in his chair. I dropped a folder onto his desk. Not long enough. His gaze flicked over the documents, his neutral expression hardening. "Jesus!" I crossed my arms. "Tell me something I don't know." Elliot flipped through the pages, brows knitting. "Serena, you never had a marriage. You had a contract. And the worst part? Some clauses were altered after you signed. The ink's different. This prenup was tampered with." A sharp chill ran through me. "You're saying they forged my contract?" "I'm saying you weren't meant to notice." My stomach twisted. "Who orchestrated this?" Elliot hesitated, then slid another file toward me. The name on it wasn't Dorian's. "No," I whispered. "Yes," Elliot said darkly. "Dorian's rich, but not powerful. Not like this." I scanned the documents. Bank statements, shell companies, financial transfers. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a scheme to control wealth through marriages. I was just another pawn. "Does Dorian even know?" I asked. Elliot's pause was too long. "If he does, he's as trapped as you." Anger burned away my nausea. "What are my options?" "Legally? You could challenge it, but they designed this to drain you in court." "And the smart option?" Elliot shut the folder. "Find leverage. Make them regret thinking you were an easy target." An hour later, I stepped onto the wet pavement, mind racing. That's when I noticed it. A black car, too polished, too clean. A man in a tailored suit stepped into my path. "You've done enough digging, Ms. Kane." I raised a brow. "And you are?" He ignored the question. "Take the settlement, walk away." I huffed a short laugh. There it is. The first threat. Not a threat, a suggestion. "Or what?" His expression remained cool. "Or you'll wish this divorce was the worst thing to happen to you." I stepped forward, voice steady. "Tell your boss. If he thinks I'll roll over, he hasn't done his research." For the first time, his smirk faltered. I turned and walked away. I wasn't just fighting Dorian anymore. The city hummed around me as I walked, the weight of what had just happened settling into my bones. I had been threatened before, but this was different. This wasn't personal. It was business. And that made it far more dangerous. I hailed a cab, ignoring the way my hands clenched into fists in my lap as we weaved through traffic. I needed more than speculation, more than anger. I needed proof. By the time I reached Archer and Webb Investigations, my pulse had evened out, my mind sharp again. This was where the real fight started. The office smelled of stale coffee and old leather, a stark contrast to the sleek law firms I was used to. Private investigators weren't interested in appearances. They were interested in results. The man behind the desk barely glanced up from his laptop. James Archer, a former NYPD detective turned private investigator, rumored to have dirt on half the city. "You came to the right place," he said, finally looking at me. "But that doesn't mean you're gonna like what you find." I pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "I need everything on these people. Bank records, offshore accounts, any deals they don't want in the open." James flipped through the pages, eyebrows raising slightly. "This isn't about a cheating husband, is it?" I shook my head. "It's about power." His lips twitched. "Good. That means it's worth my time." For the next hour, I watched as he pulled up files, cross-referencing names, searching records that weren't exactly public. Then, something shifted. His expression darkened as he leaned closer to the screen. Well, well, well. Looks like your ex and his family are dirtier than I thought. I leaned in. What did you find? Shell companies, he said, scrolling through the records. Money laundering through fake investments. And get this, your name is tied to one of them. My stomach dropped. What? They didn't just screw you in the divorce, lady. They used you. Your accounts, your name, your business. Everything was a front for them to move money. I swallowed hard. So they didn't just use me, they laundered through me. James nodded. If this gets out, it won't just be a divorce case. It'll be a federal investigation. I sat back, gripping the armrests of the chair. I had come here looking for leverage. Instead, I had found a loaded gun. As I left the office, my mind raced through the possibilities. I had two options. Take this information and use it to crush them in court. Go public and let the government do the job for me. Either way, the Canes would lose. I barely had time to process before I saw it. The black car. Parked across the street, waiting. I kept walking. I had expected them to send someone, but not so soon. Not so obvious. The same man from before stepped out, his expression unreadable. I told you to walk away. I crossed my arms. And I told you I don't take orders. His jaw tensed. You have no idea what you've started. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. No, I whispered. You have no idea what I just found. His eyes flickered, just for a second. Gotcha. I didn't go straight home. Instead, I pulled out my phone and made the one call that would change everything. Elliot, I said when my lawyer picked up. Get ready to file. We're tearing this contract apart. The game had officially started. Elliot didn't waste time. By the time I stepped into his office the next morning, a fresh legal motion was already waiting on his desk. Fraudulent financial activity, misconduct in contractual agreements, intentional asset concealment. This wasn't just about my prenup anymore. Dorian won't see this coming, Elliot said, flipping through the paperwork. His smirk was sharp. He thought he was covering his tracks. He didn't count on you fighting back. I leaned forward. File it. He nodded and picked up the phone. Let's make his morning a disaster. By noon, my case was officially in motion. The lawsuit challenged the entire foundation of the prenup, citing fraud and financial manipulation. If it went through, Dorian wouldn't just lose his settlement leverage, he'd lose his entire financial standing. For the first time in days, I felt the smallest rush of victory. And then, an email from Elliot's office shattered it. Dorian was prepared. He had moved assets weeks before filing for divorce. Bank accounts were drained. Stocks were transferred. Everything liquid had been restructured under different holdings. A preemptive countermeasure. My stomach twisted as I scanned the details. He had been planning this long before he made that phone call telling me to leave. I clenched my fists, my breath coming in short, controlled exhales. So he was always 2 steps ahead. I wasn't surprised, but I was angry. I slammed my laptop shut. I needed to hit him harder. That evening, as I paced my apartment, my phone vibrated. Anonymous message. I can help. Meet me. I froze, staring at the screen. It wasn't a number I recognized. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard, debating whether this was a trap. Then I typed 2 words. Where? The bar was dimly lit, the kind of place that catered to people who didn't want to be seen. I stepped inside, scanning the room until I spotted a lone figure sitting in a booth, watching me. I slid into the seat across from him. Who are you? I asked, keeping my voice even. He smirked. Someone who used to believe in Dorian. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a USB drive, setting it on the table between us. Dorian thinks he's untouchable, he said, voice low. Let's change that. I picked up the drive, my fingers tightening around it. What's on here? Proof, he said. Offshore accounts, illegal transfers. The money he moved before filing? This shows where it went, and it's not clean. My pulse pounded. This wasn't just leverage, this was evidence. I met his gaze. Why are you doing this? He exhaled slowly. Because I trusted him, and I lost everything. I nodded once. Welcome to the club. I got back to my apartment and plugged the USB into my laptop. The files loaded instantly. Bank transactions, wire transfers, dummy corporations, a meticulous paper trail of fraud, money laundering, and financial deceit. I took a steady breath. Then I pulled up my email. 2. Elliot Marston, subject, new evidence attachment, confidential files. I hit send. Then I opened my messaging app and typed a single sentence. You wanted to play games? Let's play. Seconds later, Dorian's name lit up my screen. I let the call go to voicemail. Then I poured myself a drink and leaned back in my chair, watching the city skyline. Now let's see how he reacts when he's the one losing. The morning passed in silence, except for the occasional ding of my phone as news alerts rolled in. Kane, financial faces legal battle amidst divorce scandal. Dorian Kane, accused of financial misconduct, insider leak? Who is Serena Kane? The woman bringing a financial empire to its knees. I smirked. The game was no longer played in the shadows. Then came the knock. Hard. Repetitive. Angry. I knew who it was before I even opened the door. Dorian stormed in the moment I unlatched it, his jaw clenched, eyes blazing. He looked nothing like the composed, untouchable man he had always been. This was someone on the verge of losing control. Do you have any idea what you've done? His voice was sharp, laced with barely concealed panic. I crossed my arms. Yes. I took back control. He let out a bitter laugh, pacing the room like a caged animal. You think this is some kind of revenge story? You think you can win against people like us? Then why do you sound so desperate? I tilted my head, watching him closely. He stopped, his nostrils flaring. You have no idea the kind of mess you've just stepped into, Serena. Oh, I think I do, I said coolly. The real question is, do you? Then his phone rang. His entire demeanor shifted. His gaze darted to the screen before he quickly stepped away, lowering his voice as he answered. I can fix this. No, I didn't know she had the files. I swear, I felt my stomach turn. He wasn't scared of me. He was scared of them. When Dorian turned back, his rage had drained, replaced with something I rarely saw in him. Fear. Who was that? I asked, though I already had an idea. He didn't answer. I stepped forward. Looks like I'm not the only one being played. His hands balled into fists. You don't understand what you've done. Then enlighten me. For the first time, he hesitated. And that told me everything. The pieces began falling into place. The offshore accounts, the silent business partners, the deals I had never been privy to. I had assumed Dorian was the one pulling the strings, but he wasn't. Someone bigger, someone powerful, someone who controlled even him. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This isn't just about us, is it? I asked, my voice quieter now. Dorian's jaw tightened. He gave me one last unreadable look before turning and walking out the door. For the first time, he didn't have a smug parting shot. The elevator ride was silent, except for the faint hum of the mechanics shifting behind the polished steel walls. 34th floor. I stood still, staring at my reflection in the mirrored panels. The woman staring back was calm, composed, but not the same woman who had walked into this mess. The door slid open. A receptionist, dressed in a sleek black suit, gave me a practiced smile. Ms. Kane, they're expecting you. Of course they were. She gestured toward a set of large double doors at the end of the corridor. My heels echoed as I walked. Each step was measured, deliberate. No hesitation, no fear. I pushed the doors open, and there they were. Not just an investor, not just a silent partner. Someone I had known for years. Someone who had watched me fall apart and had done nothing. The real mastermind. The smirk on their face was calm, calculating. Well, Serena, I was wondering when you'd figure it out. I lowered myself into the chair across from them, my hands steady as I set my bag beside me. So, it was you. They leaned back. You always were smart. Too smart, actually. That was the problem. My stomach twisted, but I didn't let it show. This wasn't about money, I said slowly. They tilted their head, amused. No, dear. It never was. I swallowed the anger bubbling in my chest. I wasn't going to let them see it. Then what? They exhaled as if they were speaking to a slow student who had finally caught up. This was never about Dorian. He's just a convenient pawn. Disposable, really. My jaw clenched. Then who was the real target? Their eyes darkened. Your father. A slow chill ran through me. My father has nothing to do with this. Oh, but he does. They leaned forward. You see, years ago, he made enemies. Powerful ones. He thought walking away would be enough. But people like us. We don't forget, Serena. My throat tightened. So you used me. Not used, positioned. They shrugged. The marriage? Just a tool. A way to ensure that what your father built would be dismantled piece by piece. Dorian played his part. And you? You were never meant to last long. I felt the sharp sting of betrayal dig deep, but I forced myself to exhale, keeping my hands relaxed. And now? I asked. They slid a folder toward me. Now, we end this cleanly. Take the settlement, disappear, and you'll walk away with more than most do. I glanced at the papers. An easy way out. A golden parachute. A way to make me disappear. I ran my fingers over the crisp edges, pretending to consider. Then, I slowly pushed the papers back across the table. No deal. For the first time, their smirk wavered. I reached into my bag, pulling out a small USB drive and sliding it across the table. You built a system so powerful, you thought no one could break it. But here's the thing. I leaned in, watching their eyes narrow. I already sent these files to the DOJ. Silence. A long, tense silence. Then, their fingers drummed once against the table. You think that's enough? I smiled. Number, I think it's just the beginning. 3 months later, I sat in the cold, rigid wooden bench of a Manhattan courtroom, watching as the remnants of my past unraveled before me. Dorian sat at the defense table, his hands clasped, a hollow look in his eyes. He wasn't the man I once knew, the charming, composed executive who had convinced me that our life together was built on something real. No, this version of Dorian was smaller, stripped of his arrogance, left only with the weight of his own choices. The prosecutor stood. Mr. Kane, can you confirm the existence of the offshore accounts linked to your firm? Dorian hesitated. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something, but he only exhaled heavily before speaking. Yes. His voice was flat, resigned. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. And can you confirm that these accounts were used to funnel money through fraudulent investments? Investments tied directly to your prenuptial agreement? Dorian's jaw clenched. He looked down at his hands before nodding. Yes. I felt no victory in his downfall. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about setting things right. The judge cleared his throat, straightening the papers in front of him. Given the evidence presented, this court finds that the prenuptial agreement is void, as it was predicated on fraudulent financial activity. Furthermore, Mr. Kane is to remain under federal investigation for financial crimes related to Kane Financial. The gavel struck. It was over. Dorian turned slightly, looking at me from across the room. His eyes were tired, no longer burning with the anger or entitlement I had seen before. I never had a choice, he muttered. I studied him for a long moment before responding. Neither did I, until now. I walked out of the courthouse into the crisp fall air, inhaling deeply, trying to shake the weight of it all. As I reached the steps, my phone buzzed. A single message. You won this round, but be careful where you step next. I exhaled slowly. Even behind bars, the mastermind still had reach, But this time, I wasn't afraid. I stared at the message before typing a response. I don't play by your rules anymore. And I hit send. Months later, I stood in my new apartment, overlooking the skyline of a city that didn't know my name. The furniture was sparse, the walls still bare, but this space was mine. No contracts, no hidden agendas, no carefully planned moves designed to trap me in someone else's game. I had spent too long inside their world, playing by their rules, trying to survive in a system that was never meant to be fair. But now, I was building my own. I let out a small breath, one I hadn't even realized I'd been holding, and stepped forward, leaving the past behind me where it belonged. For the first time in years, I was free. As I stood by my window, looking out at the city lights, I realized something. Life doesn't always give us the choices we want, but it does give us the chance to take back control. The truth is, we are always one decision away from changing everything. It's easy to let others dictate our worth, to let relationships, careers, or even society tell us what we deserve. But the moment you decide to break free, the moment you refuse to be a pawn in someone else's game, that's when real power begins. Maybe you've been in a situation where you felt powerless. Maybe you've trusted the wrong people, believed in something that turned out to be a lie. But know this, you are never as stuck as you think you are. There is always a way forward. And if this video resonated with you, if it made you think or even feel something, drop a 1 in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like it, tell me why. I want to know. Don't forget to subscribe. This is just the beginning. I'll see you in the next one.
When I got very sick, my wife and daughter left me. Years later, they came back, trying to take over my house. But let me start from the beginning. It all started when I was told I had advanced Hodgkin's lymphoma. This came as a shock since I had always stayed active, ate well, and kept up with my doctor visits. The doctor couldn't say why I got cancer, and even though my chances of surviving were slim, I was determined to fight. After hearing the news, I sat down with my wife of 17 years, Lauren read give me all women and men names in script, and our teenage daughter, Joyce, to tell them. They were heartbroken, but I told them I'd do everything I could to beat it. I also worried about how this would change our family life. My doctor had warned me that chemo would be very hard on me and that many marriages don't survive such stress. Later that night, I shared my fears with my wife. She promised she'd stick by me through it all and would do her best to help me. We were financially stable with good insurance, savings, and a trust fund from my grandfather. Our house was paid off, and I had saved for Joyce's college in case anything happened to me. 2 weeks later, I started chemotherapy. It was rough. When I came home, I felt completely exhausted, like I'd been hit by a truck. I could hardly do anything. Feeding myself, bathing, or even walking was tough. My wife and daughter took over, helping with meals, house chores, taking me to appointments, and getting my medications. I tried not to rely on them too much and helped when I could. When I had enough energy, this routine continued for 2 exhausting months. But soon, I noticed my wife and daughter seemed irritated whenever I asked for help. My daughter even stopped responding when I asked for simple things, like a glass of water or some fresh air. Things came to a head one morning when I had an early chemo appointment. I realized I was running late, but my wife hadn't come down from our room. When I called up to check, she told me, sounding tired, that I should take an Uber because she was too tired. I was shocked, but I ordered an Uber and let the hospital know I'd be coming alone. Luckily, the Uber driver was very kind, making sure I got to the hospital safely and even offering to drive me back after treatment. I was grateful, but it hurt to rely on a stranger for help. When I got home that day, things felt different. After resting for a while, I gathered the courage to ask my wife and daughter why they'd been acting distant. I asked if they felt I was a burden. My wife sighed and admitted they felt overwhelmed. My daughter, hesitantly, said she hadn't expected me to need so much help. I knew we needed a solution, so I suggested hiring a nurse who could come a few times a week to help with daily tasks and take me to chemo. To make it easier for them, I also ordered a wheelchair in case there were days I was too weak. They agreed, and I contacted the hospital for nurse recommendations. They sent a nurse who was kind yet firm. She made sure I never missed a chemo appointment, got my medications on time, and even created a plan with healthy meals. Things seemed to improve, and the doctors were happy with my progress. But despite my efforts to ease their load, my wife and daughter still didn't seem happy. My wife, in particular, began to feel as if the nurse was taking over her role. I suggested that if she wanted, she could start handling my appointments, picking up prescriptions, and other tasks again. I ate and took my medicine on time, so we could consider letting the nurse go. The only reason we had a nurse was because my wife found it too hard to manage everything on her own, and she agreed to this plan reluctantly. She asked if we could hire a male nurse instead, but I told her there were no male nurses on the hospital's recommended list. The nurse we had was chosen because she had experience with cancer patients and understood my needs well. She was thorough, caring, and very respectful toward both my wife and daughter. I explained that the only way we'd replace her was if my wife and daughter could take on her duties. My wife didn't like this idea and said I should do more for myself instead of making my condition everyone else's problem. I tried to explain that some days I could barely lift my head, let alone stand up, as the chemo was really wearing me down. Frustrated, she stormed upstairs, slamming doors. I decided to ignore her, knowing that focusing on my recovery was most important. Later that night, my mother-in-law called from 2 states away, upset about me bringing another woman into her daughter's home. Technically, the house was mine as I'd owned it before we got married, but I kept things respectful. I explained that I needed help, and my needs were more than my wife could handle, so I'd hired the nurse to ease the load on the family. I also told her that the nurse was only temporary and would stay until my final month of chemo, as long as my cancer didn't worsen. She didn't fully agree, but eventually she let it go, which was all I wanted. For about a week after that call, things seemed okay, and my treatment went smoothly. Then, one day after returning from chemo, I saw a moving truck parked in front of my house. My wife and daughter had packed their things and told me they were going to stay at her mom's place. I was deeply hurt and exhausted, so I couldn't express my feelings properly. Her timing, leaving just after my chemo when she knew I'd be too weak to talk, felt especially painful as I tried to make sense of it all. I looked at my daughter and asked if this was truly what she wanted. She was old enough to make her own choices. Her answer hit me hard. She said she wanted to live with her mom because it was too hard living with me. Watching them leave was painful, and as they went, tears filled my eyes. It was exactly what I feared when I started my chemo, that I'd feel unwanted and left alone. During this emotional time, my brother came to help. He noticed the nurse spending extra time with me that day and asked if I had any family nearby who could help out. Although he lived 4 hours away and had 2 young kids, he offered to take time off work to stay with me until I could arrange something more permanent. When he arrived, he was angry at my wife's actions, calling her selfish and ungrateful, pointing out that she'd never had to work since we married, and I'd always made sure she had everything she needed. My brother could only stay for a week, but he had an idea. His wife's sister, Julie, was going through a tough divorce and needed a safe place to stay temporarily. Her soon-to-be ex-husband had been the main provider, and she didn't have much money. Julie was also studying radiology on a scholarship at a nearby university, and my house was closer to the campus. This would be a good solution. I'd have someone in the house for emergencies, and she'd have a peaceful place away from her difficult situation. I agreed to this plan, telling my brother that Julie wouldn't have to pay rent since she'd already be helping by staying with me. She could pick whichever room she wanted. I didn't mind, as my wife and daughter had taken almost everything, leaving just a bed and a few dresses. My brother stayed for the week, and on his last day, Julie moved in. She thanked me for letting her stay and promised to be respectful, clean up after herself, and help when needed. Julie was a genuinely kind person. I told her she wouldn't need to do much since my nurse would now be coming 6 days a week instead of 4. I said goodbye to my brother and helped Julie settle in as best as I could. In the weeks that followed, things went smoothly. I missed my wife and daughter, but it seemed like I was the only one feeling that way since they didn't even call or check on me. Julie, however, was a huge help. She did the grocery shopping, took care of most of the cleaning, and even helped with meals, all without a single complaint. About a month and a half after my wife left, I got the incredible news that I was cancer-free. I celebrated by ringing the bell at the hospital. My nurse asked me what I wanted to do next, now that I was healthy. My first decision was to file for a divorce, ending a marriage that hadn't supported me through my hardest times. With the divorce in progress, I focused on healing. I started getting my strength back, my hair grew, my scar began to fade, and I put on weight. I mostly stuck to a healthy diet, but I allowed myself the occasional treat, enjoying foods I'd missed. It's now been 5 months since I was declared cancer-free, and I feel ready to move on. I called my old job, and they offered me a remote position. I'm planning to take it, as I've decided to move away. Though I feel connected to my house, it holds too many sad memories. I need a fresh start somewhere smaller. My wife doesn't know it yet, but I'm planning to give the house to Julie. She helped me at my lowest, showing great kindness even though we barely knew each other. She's free to sell it if she wants. I don't want anything that could somehow end up in my wife or daughter's hands. My new place is in a quiet neighborhood in the countryside, and I'm excited about this fresh start. Update: it's been over a year since my diagnosis, and I'm settling into my new home and neighborhood. The people here are friendly, and I've even become friends with my neighbor Maria. She's a widow whose kids live far away, only visiting on holidays. She invited me over to her porch for drinks and shared her story of losing her husband to lung cancer, which was heartbreaking. She also shared how important life insurance was for her family's financial security during that hard time. I opened up to Maria about what happened with my wife and daughter. Surprisingly, I still hadn't heard from them, but I've made peace with it. I've been filling my time with new hobbies, especially woodworking, and I'm starting to build a good set of tools. One day, after I came back from the hardware store, Maria told me she'd seen some people around my house. Thankfully, they didn't damage anything or try to break in, but they did knock on the door, walk around the house, and eventually waited in their car for a while. Maria thought about calling the sheriff but decided not to, thinking they might be family. When I asked her to describe them, her description sounded exactly like my wife and daughter. I couldn't figure out how they found me since only my brother and his wife knew my address. I wondered why they were looking for me after leaving a year ago without a word. Maria assured me that if they came back, I should stay inside, and she'd handle it. Honestly, I have no interest in talking to them after they left me at my lowest. Later, I called my brother, and he told me my wife and daughter had been bothering Julie and her roommate at my old house. Thankfully, Julie had paperwork proving the house was in her name, as she had bought it from me to avoid issues. I felt bad that Julie had to go through this because of my family, so I called to apologize. I hope I can settle this if they show up again. As for my wife, I'm not sure if she knows about the divorce. My lawyer sent a copy to her mom's house, but maybe they thought it was junk mail. Either way, I don't care anymore. She and I are done. Update: my wife and daughter came back to the house again, this time during the day while I was working. I heard a knock, checked the security cameras, and saw them at the door. My ex-wife looked the same, but Joyce had grown. She looked like a young woman now. I followed the plan Maria and I discussed, staying inside but moving closer to the door to listen. Maria, being a good neighbor, came over and greeted them, introducing herself. My wife asked if she knew a man named Peter who used to live here. Maria played along, acting puzzled as if she had no idea. I was surprised when my ex-wife told Maria that her husband, not ex-husband, used to live in this house and had recently passed away after a long hospital stay. I was shocked because, as far as I knew, there was no record of my death anywhere, especially not at the hospital where I was treated. Then, my ex-wife claimed they were my next of kin, suggesting that the house belonged to them. Maria calmly told them that a man named Peter did live here, but he was divorced. She explained that I had shared with her how my wife had left me and that I had filed for divorce. Maria also mentioned that, as far as she knew, I planned to leave everything to charity since I had no family except my brother. That's why she was surprised to see them around the house. There was an awkward silence before Maria asked if they had a death certificate or will. They didn't. Maria then explained that if they got those documents, they could go to the county records office to put the deed in their name if they were the rightful owners. My ex-wife didn't like this at all. She demanded to know who Maria thought she was and began yelling, saying that Maria had no right to interfere and calling her nosy. I felt embarrassed. My neighbors here had been nothing but kind, and here was my ex-wife causing a scene. Part of me wanted to go outside and tell her off, but I decided to stick with the plan. Maria, being kind, just apologized, saying she was only trying to help, and then she went back to her home. Shortly after, my ex-wife and daughter left. After I finished work, I went to apologize to Maria, but she laughed it off, saying that while my ex-wife's behavior was rude, it was also a bit funny. I wished I could agree, but I knew how angry my ex-wife could get. I decided that if she came back, I would confront her and ask her to leave me alone. Yesterday, she returned again. I was working in my office when I heard a loud crash. Rushing to the living room, I saw that my front window was smashed, and I could hear people shouting outside. I thought there might be a crazy person outside, and I wasn't entirely wrong. It was my ex-wife. She had smashed my window, and my neighbors were out there trying to hold her back. Apparently, she'd been causing a scene for a while, but I hadn't noticed because I was wearing noise-canceling headphones while working. Even if I hadn't taken a break, I probably wouldn't have heard her. When I got outside, 2 of my elderly neighbors were trying their best to stop my ex from doing more damage. Both she and Joyce were holding bats, and they had already broken some of my potted plants. I grabbed her arm and asked if she'd completely lost it. She looked shocked, more like shocked to see me alive. I told her and my daughter to get off my property before I called the cops, not knowing my neighbors had already called them. She seemed hurt by my words, asking why I hadn't reached out to her after I recovered, insisting she and Joyce would have come back. I told her we made vows to stand by each other in sickness and in health, and she'd broken those vows. I wanted nothing more to do with her. She wasn't my wife anymore, and I'd already sent divorce papers months ago. I told her to leave again. Then she brought up our daughter, saying she'd be going to college next year and couldn't afford tuition alone. I replied, "Your daughter chose to abandon me too. I'm ready to give up all my parental rights to you. You both should have thought about this before leaving me. I want nothing to do with either of you." She went from looking upset to furious, calling me selfish and heartless, which I found ironic. I shouted back, telling her she was the last person who should be calling anyone selfish and calling her entitled. I made it clear that she wouldn't get a dime from me ever again. She swung the bat at me just as the cops arrived. They arrested both her and my daughter on the spot. When they asked if I wanted to press charges, I said yes without hesitation. My ex and daughter started crying as they were loaded into the police car, but I felt no sympathy. I had everything on camera, including the window smashing, and had already shared it with the police. After work, I ordered a new window and cleaned up the broken glass. I rigged up a tarp to cover the window for now, and Maria kindly gave me some buckets to hold my plants until they can be replanted. After cleaning up the broken glass from the smashed window and setting up a tarp to cover it, I started thinking about what could have brought my ex-wife back to cause such a scene. Curiosity got the better of me, so I did some digging and I found out a lot. It turns out that my ex-wife's mother had passed away 3 months ago. After her mother's passing, my ex-wife and daughter realized the house they'd been living in didn't actually belong to her parents. It was owned by her father's cousin. This cousin decided he wanted to sell the property, and he asked them to move out. With both of her parents now gone and no other family support, my ex-wife and daughter had to sell off most of her parents' belongings to cover expenses. They'd been living in a motel for a while, struggling to make ends meet. I think desperation must have brought them back to our old home, where they discovered Julie living there. When they saw Julie in the house, they assumed I had passed away. They probably thought Julie had taken over my property, which led them to start snooping around, looking for any records or clues about my assets and financial details. Somewhere along the line, they must have found my current address and decided to track me down. This whole situation had clearly gotten out of hand, and now both my ex-wife and daughter were facing serious consequences for their actions. They're currently being charged with vandalism, attempted break-in, and attempted assault. Since my daughter is still a minor, her punishment is lighter. She's being given community service. My ex-wife, however, is facing jail time because it's obvious this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. It was planned. She came prepared with a bat, and she brought my daughter along with the same intent. Given everything that happened, I'm considering getting a restraining order against my ex-wife to keep her away from me and my property. The charges alone should keep her occupied for a while, and with a restraining order in place, I'll feel more at ease knowing she can't legally come near me or my home again. For now, at least, I can focus on moving forward without constantly looking over my shoulder. With a tarp covering the window, I ordered replacements for the damaged pots, and my neighbor Maria kindly offered some buckets to keep the plants in temporarily. The charges, along with the possible restraining order, give me some peace of mind. In the end, I feel a strange sense of relief. While my ex-wife's unexpected return caused a lot of chaos, it also helped close a difficult chapter in my life. I finally have clarity on where things stand with her and my daughter, and I can fully let go of the hope that we might someday mend things.
In a fancy neighborhood in Tampa, 18-year-old Linda Smith stood by the window on the third floor of her family's six-story home. The sky was turning purple as the day ended, and the headlights of expensive cars lit up the street below. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her best friend, Jennifer. "Linda, this is serious. Did the police contact you? Your parents are really worried. Please answer." Linda stared at her screen, confused. The police? Her parents were worried? She didn't understand. More messages came in. "Is it true you're missing? Where are you? Everyone is looking for you." Her hands started to shake. A chill ran through her body. She was here. She had been staying at the house all week since her parents didn't let her go with them to their wedding. She quickly replied, "Jennifer, what are you talking about? I'm here." Right away, her phone rang. Jennifer's voice was shaky. "What? But your parents reported you missing. Haven't you seen Instagram?" Linda quickly opened Instagram. What she saw shocked her. There was a family photo taken at a luxury resort in Mexico. Blue skies, palm trees, everyone dressed perfectly. Her mom wore a stylish summer dress. Her dad was in a neat linen suit. Her sister Betty had on a designer dress, and her brother Austin wore a trendy suit. It looked like a perfect family vacation. But the caption from her mom said, "Our beloved daughter Linda is missing. This special day is filled with mixed emotions. We are working with the police and praying for her safety." Linda's vision blurred. She felt sick. Her legs were weak, and she leaned against a fancy chair by the window. She looked around the room, white walls, designer furniture, and a huge bookshelf. She was really here, but the world thought she was missing. The house felt a little cold, even though it was beautiful. It was filled with memories from Linda's 18 years of life. But this same house became the reason her parents gave for not wanting her at their wedding. It all began one morning in April during breakfast. Linda's usually cheerful mom had big news. After living together for 26 years without getting married, her parents had finally decided to have a real wedding. "It's going to be in Mexico," her mom, Emily, said with excitement. "It'll be a small but beautiful ceremony." She turned to Linda's older sister. "Betty, I want you to be my maid of honor." Betty cheered. "Mom, it's going to be amazing. We'll make sure everything is perfect. Your dress, your hair, your makeup." Then Linda's dad, Brandon, looked at her older brother. "Austin, will you be my best man?" "Of course, Dad. I'd be honored." But no one looked at Linda. At the big, fancy dining table, there were 6 family members, but only 4 were actually talking. Linda sat there quietly, almost invisible. It had always been this way. Her sister and brother were the stars of the family, the ones their parents were proud of. Linda was just average, no special talents, nothing that stood out. Compared to her siblings, she seemed unimportant. Over time, Linda got used to feeling like she didn't matter. As the wedding plans moved ahead, her mom and Betty often went shopping together for dresses. They looked more like close friends than mother and daughter. Her dad and Austin went to a high-end tailor for tuxedos. Austin even helped plan the honeymoon and talked about luxury cars with his dad. The living room filled up with wedding brochures, flight details, and notes from the wedding planner. Every conversation was about the wedding. These white roses would look great at the venue. Let's go with French and Italian food. We already have over 170 guests. Linda just sat and listened. She hoped someone might notice her. But no one ever did. At one point, someone brought up the idea of a flower girl. For a second, it seemed like they might pick Linda. But then her sister said, Carol would be perfect. Carol was Betty's 4-year-old daughter. Yes, she'll be so cute, someone said. She's the perfect age. Everyone will want to take pictures of her. And just like that, Linda was forgotten again. When Linda's grandmother, Laura, suggested that Linda read a poem at the wedding, her parents said no right away. We want a simple ceremony, her mother said. No need for extra performances, her father added. Linda understood what they really meant. They thought she wasn't needed. One evening in September, her father called out, Linda, can I talk to you for a minute? In the living room, her mother was looking at pictures of the wedding venue on an expensive tablet. When Linda walked in, her mom turned off the screen. There's something we need to discuss about the wedding, her mother said, choosing her words carefully while sitting on a leather sofa. She paused. We think it's better if you don't come. Linda froze. She couldn't believe what she just heard. The room, full of fancy furniture, suddenly felt cold. What do you mean? She asked. The wedding is going to be very classy, her mother said, moving her toes across a soft Persian carpet. You're not really good with those kinds of events, are you? Not good with it? Linda's voice shook. The chandelier above her felt too bright. You don't want me there? Her father cleared his throat from his big leather armchair. You wouldn't fit in, not like Betty or Austin. You'd be uncomfortable. But I'm your daughter, Linda said, her voice echoing in the large room. Exactly, her mother replied while playing with her expensive necklace. We don't want to put you in a difficult spot. At that moment, something inside Linda broke. It felt like her family, the one she had been part of for 18 years, was falling apart. Difficult? You mean embarrassing, she said, raising her voice. She looked at the family photos on the walls. Suddenly, they didn't feel real. I embarrass you? Not like that, her mother said quickly, nervously touching her bracelet. Then what do you mean? Linda asked, her voice full of hurt. You're not inviting your own daughter to your wedding. How does that make sense? Her father's voice turned firm. Linda, don't be selfish. Selfish. Linda gave a bitter laugh. Her eyes landed on the perfect family photo above the fireplace. It looked like a fake image of happiness. Wanting to be at my parents' wedding is selfish? Her mother sighed. You always make things harder. You never try to understand us. This wedding is very important. Linda's voice trembled. I've spent 18 years trying to understand you. Have you ever tried to understand me even once? After that night, Linda stayed in her room. Even though it was large and filled with expensive furniture, designer lights, and the latest audio gear, she felt smaller and smaller inside. Linda had everything she could ever need: fancy clothes, nice food, a big room. But one thing was missing: love. The housekeeper, Amy, brought her meals to her room every day. Amy looked at her with kindness, but she never said anything. From her window, Linda watched her family getting ready for the wedding. Her mom and Betty came home carrying shopping bags full of designer clothes. Her dad and Austin went out in a luxury car for tuxedo fittings. Relatives and family friends kept arriving at the house. But no one came to her room. No one knocked. The day before the trip, Linda gathered the courage to ask her mom one last time. Mom, am I really not allowed to come to the wedding? Her mom didn't even look up from the book she was reading while sitting in a chair by the window. No. We didn't even buy you a plane ticket. They hadn't forgotten. There just wasn't a ticket for her. From the beginning, they had never planned for her to be part of it. The next morning, the family left early. Linda watched from her third-floor window as their suitcases were packed into a fancy taxi. Her mom wore a stylish designer suit. Her dad had on a custom-made tie. Betty was dressed in a famous brand's gown, and Austin looked sharp in a classy outfit. They looked like a perfect family in a magazine photo. But Linda wasn't part of it. No one looked up. No one said goodbye. It was like she had never been there at all. After they left, photos started showing up on social media. A private beach at a luxury resort in Mexico. Spending the best time with my family. A celebration at a 7-star hotel. Enjoying every moment with my loved ones. Tomorrow is our big day. The comments poured in. What a beautiful family. This is the kind of family I dream of having. You all look so happy together. Linda stared at her expensive phone. There was her family, smiling, laughing, looking perfect in fancy clothes at a beautiful place. But there was no sign of her. It was like she didn't exist. The meals Amy brought her stayed untouched. Her big, fancy room felt more and more empty. Time passed slowly. Then, a week after the wedding, her phone rang. Linda, did the police contact you? Jennifer's voice was full of worry. Your parents are really concerned. Please answer me. Linda's voice shook. Police? What are you talking about? What? You don't know? Jennifer said. Your parents reported you missing. Haven't you seen Instagram? Everyone's worried. Linda's hands shook as she opened the app. As she scrolled, she saw post after post. Then she saw her mother's message. Our youngest daughter is missing. This special day is full of mixed emotions. We are working with the police and praying for her safe return. Please pray for Linda. To our beloved daughter, come home soon. The comments were full of concern. I'm so sorry. I hope she's found soon. Did the police find any clues? How heartbreaking, especially on such a happy day. Linda stared at the screen in shock. Her mind went blank. Her stomach turned, and she felt like she might fall right there on the floor. They knew she was home. They knew she was in this room. They had left her behind, and now they were lying. The soft evening light came through the window. Linda stood up. This lie from her parents wasn't just about today. It was the result of 18 years of being ignored and left out. She started to plan carefully. First, she took the day's newspaper and placed it somewhere the date could be clearly seen. Then she took a selfie in her room with the sunset behind her through the window. Her face was calm. Next, she started to write her post. I am not missing. I'm in my room at home in Tampa. My parents know I'm here. They didn't let me come to the wedding. They told me I didn't fit in. They didn't buy me a plane ticket. They didn't get a dress for me. And now they are lying, saying I'm missing. This is the truth. The sad truth behind the perfect image they show the world. She paused and took a deep breath. Then, with one tap, she ended 18 years of silence. She pressed post. The reaction came fast. Within 40 minutes, her inbox was full. Friends and family messaged. Linda, is this true? This is awful. Do you need anything? How can I help? Even strangers reached out. Her post was spreading quickly, shared with hashtags like. Then came 25 missed calls from her mother. Her voice messages were panicked. Linda, what are you doing? Please delete this. Think about how this makes us feel. Messages came from her siblings and father, too. Just after midnight, Linda got a call. It was from her grandmother, Laura. Her voice was soft and warm, like always. But this time, there was a calm strength in it. I saw everything, Linda, she said. I saw the posts, the comments, and the missing person report. Tears streamed down Linda's face. You've done well, sweetheart, her grandmother said gently. You've gone through this alone for 18 years. That's enough now. But I'm only 18. And they're my parents, Linda said, her voice shaking. Don't worry about the legal stuff, her grandmother said with calm strength. I've already talked to your Uncle Dylan. He's made arrangements with a lawyer. Really? Linda asked, a small bit of hope starting to grow inside her. Yes. That missing person report was the final straw, her grandmother said. This isn't just a family problem anymore. It's clearly abuse. The court will take your side. The next morning, her grandmother gave her a clear plan. At 1 p.m. the day after tomorrow, Dylan and I will come to pick you up. Just pack the essentials. Don't forget important things like your passport, insurance card, and school records. Linda quietly started to pack. Packing up 18 years of life wasn't easy, but in the end, there weren't many things she truly needed. On the day they promised to come, just as her parents' taxi pulled up to the house, fresh from their trip to Mexico, a surprise was waiting. Laura, her grandmother, and Uncle Dylan were standing at the front door with a lawyer in a gray suit. Her parents froze in shock. "Mom," Emily's voice shook. "Why are you here?" "We came to find our missing granddaughter," Laura replied, her voice sharp and cold. Brandon stepped forward. "This is a family matter. Outsiders." "Outsiders?" Laura interrupted. "Who lied and told the police their daughter was missing?" She pulled out a stack of papers. "Here is proof Linda was in her room the whole time. Testimony from the housekeeper, Amy included." Her parents' faces went pale. "Linda, come down," Laura called. Linda slowly walked down the stairs, carrying a suitcase and a small bag. Her whole life, 18 years, was packed in those bags. "What are you doing?" her father demanded. His fancy suit was wrinkled, his collar messy. "Posting something so shameful online. What were you thinking?" Linda looked him straight in the eye, her voice shaking but firm. "Was my post shameful? Or is it more shameful that my parents lied and said I was missing?" "We were thinking about you," Emily tried to say. Tears ran down her sun-kissed cheeks. "Thinking about me?" Linda raised her voice. "You left me behind. You told people I disappeared." The grand front hall went completely silent. The crystal chandelier above them gave off a cold light. "Why?" Linda asked softly. "Why did you say I was missing?" Emily looked nervous. She held her expensive purse tightly. "It was about appearances," she finally said. "How could we tell people our daughter didn't want to come? What would that do to our reputation?" Linda's voice cracked. "Didn't want to come? You never let me. You excluded me. You've always been different," Emily shouted. "You never try to be like Betty and Austin. You're always alone, always choosing your own path. So that makes it okay to erase me?" Linda asked quietly. No one answered. The shadows on the marble floor grew longer as evening came. "Linda, let's go," Laura said gently. Linda picked up her luggage and walked toward the front door. Emily suddenly called out in a panic. "Wait," she rushed forward, her high heels clicking loudly on the floor. "You're still a minor. You can't just—" "That's enough," Laura said calmly. The lawyer stepped forward and held out some papers. "These are documents for the court," he said clearly. "We have proof of abuse and neglect. The false missing person report on social media. It's all documented." "Are you trying to threaten us?" Brandon growled. "This isn't a threat," the lawyer replied. "These are the facts. We hope to handle this peacefully." Her parents said nothing. The house was silent, full of expensive furniture and cold air. Linda turned back one last time before stepping into the taxi. Her parents stood at the entrance, frozen. Emily wiped her tears with a fancy handkerchief. Brandon stared off into the distance, saying nothing. "In 18 years, Linda said softly, have you ever truly seen me as part of this family?" No one replied. Only the evening breeze answered her. The taxi began to drive away. Laura quietly held Linda's hand. "This is the start of a new chapter, Linda." From the back seat window, Linda watched the large, beautiful house get smaller. It was filled with 18 years of memories, but also years of pretending. A place where she had been ignored and left out. Tears ran down her face. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of freedom. She was finally taking her first step toward a new life. That night, Linda's story went viral. Rich family's missing daughter speaks out. The dark truth behind a perfect family. Teen reveals pain through social media post. TV stations asked for interviews. Newspapers wanted to hear more. Book publishers reached out. But Linda said no to all of them. She wasn't ready. She needed time to heal, to understand herself. Instead, she started a blog. She wrote honestly and from the heart. "I'm no longer the one they tried to erase. This is the beginning of my story. For anyone tired of pretending to be part of a perfect family, you are not alone." St. Mary's High School was nothing like the private school Linda had gone to in Tampa. There were no fancy clothes or competition over expensive brands. Instead, there were friendly faces and kind words. On her first day, a girl named Emma walked up to her with a smile. "You're new, right? Want to eat lunch together?" Linda paused. It was such a kind offer, no strings attached. She wasn't used to kindness like that. Some students had seen her posts online, but no one asked her uncomfortable questions. One day at lunch, Emma handed Linda a copy of the school newspaper. "Look at this," she said. "The literary club is looking for writers." Linda was interested. She had always loved writing, but her parents had told her it was useless. "Study business or law," they used to say. "You should try," Emma encouraged. "I think you're really good at it." So Linda started writing. First, she wrote short journal-style pieces. Then she moved on to stories and poems. As she poured her feelings into words, she started to feel lighter, like a weight was slowly lifting. Her first short story appeared in the school newspaper. It was called The Voice of the Erased Girl. It told the story of a girl ignored by her family, even falsely reported as missing. Though written as fiction, the story was based on Linda's real life. It got more attention than anyone expected. The girl in the story had grown up invisible, quiet behind the mask of a perfect family. But one day, she spoke up and told the truth. And by doing so, she erased the false label of missing. "Linda, this is an amazing piece," said her literature teacher, Miss Stephen. "Your words have soul." The story didn't stay within the school. It spread to local newspapers, was suggested for awards, and got shared online. Then, surprising messages started to come in. An email from her mother, Emily. "I read it. For the first time, I think I understand the pain we caused. Your words opened my eyes." A message from her sister, Betty. "I never really thought about how you felt. We were so busy trying to be perfect, we forgot what really matters. I'm sorry." And a letter from her brother, Austin. "We acted like we didn't see what was happening. That was our biggest mistake. Your bravery showed the truth." Linda's story touched people she never thought would listen. Then one day her phone rang. The caller ID was unknown. She answered. "Hello, is this Linda?" asked a calm woman's voice. "I'm your father's sister. Your Aunt Olivia," said the woman. Linda gasped. It was the aunt who appeared in just one old family photo, the one people said had been pushed out of the family 21 years ago. "I was erased from the family," Olivia said. "I didn't fit the image of a perfect family." No one back then had the courage to speak up. Talking to Olivia helped Linda see things differently. The Smith family had a habit of cutting people out, a pattern passed down for years. Olivia's voice was full of old hurt. "I wanted to be an artist," she said, "but our parents said that wasn't good enough for the family's reputation. Your father didn't support me either. In the end, it looked like I just ran away." Linda wrote down everything with shaking hands. The family's history felt like a chain, unseen but strong, binding those who tried to be different. Later, Linda got news from the state's Young Writers Contest. "Mizu Linda Smith, your story, The Erased Ones. The truth behind a false missing person report has won first prize in the high school category." She hugged her grandmother in joy. Her story was also printed in the local newspaper. Then something unexpected happened. Her father, Brandon, sent an email. "Congratulations. We didn't see your talent, not because we couldn't, but because we chose not to. We were stuck in the Smith family tradition. We ignored Olivia. We ignored you. We thought being perfect was more important. But now I see what we lost. Olivia and then you." Her mother also sent a long email. "I read your article every day. We tried to erase you with a lie that you were missing. That was my lowest moment as a mother. I don't expect your forgiveness, but your words have reached us." Linda didn't reply. It didn't feel like the right time. Instead, she began writing a new book, The Genealogy of the Erased, a story of 3 generations of people pushed out of the Smith family. It included Aunt Olivia's dream to be a painter and Linda's own journey. Each time she wrote, it felt like a heavy weight was lifted. Words helped set her free. One day, while they were in the garden, her grandmother said, "You're the first in our family to speak up. Do you know how much hope you've given?" Her voice had made a difference. Then one day, her parents came to visit her grandmother's house. "We want to talk," her father said, his voice softer than ever before. Linda looked at her grandmother, who gave a small nod. "We've been foolish," her mother said, her voice shaking. "We never really saw you for who you are. And we hurt you in the worst way. Why did you lie and say I was missing?" Linda finally asked the question she had held in her heart for so long. "It was shameful," her father replied. "We were scared of ruining the image of our perfect family. But in the end, we made terrible choices." Linda stayed silent and listened. "We're not asking you to forgive us," her mother added. "But we now see how wrong we were, not just about your talent, but about you as a person. We want to admit that." Linda didn't accept their apology, not yet. It still felt too soon. But something inside her had started to shift. She no longer needed her parents' approval. She didn't have to live up to their expectations anymore. She had her own story to live. When spring came, Linda stood in her grandmother's garden holding a college acceptance letter. She had been accepted into a top creative writing program at a state university. In the past, her parents would have strongly disagreed with her choice to study literature. But now, she was free to follow her own path. Life felt different. The flowers in the garden looked more beautiful than they had the year before. She didn't hear much from her family anymore. Once in a while, her mother sent messages like, "I read your new book. I'm proud of you." Her father sent a birthday card, this time with warmer words than before. Her brother also reached out through texts. "Heard you won another award for your writing. That's amazing." Then, her sister sent an invitation. "If it's okay, maybe we can spend Augustinas together?" But these messages no longer disturbed her peace. Linda had found the strength to make her own choices, in her own time. Her story, the voice of the erased girl, had become known across the country. It explored the harm caused by a family's broken love, the power of social media, and the extreme lie that she had gone missing. Her story connected with many people. Even TV stations reached out, asking for interviews. "Your story is giving courage to other young people," one of the messages said. But Linda wasn't ready for the spotlight yet. She just wanted to keep writing her truth. As graduation neared, she wrote a letter to her grandmother. "Dear grandmother, a year has passed since the day you saved me. I've learned so much. I now understand that family isn't always about blood. That real love doesn't come with conditions. And most importantly, I've learned that I have value. When my parents said I was missing, that lie helped me find my true self. It gave me the strength to speak my truth. There will still be hard times ahead, but I'm no longer afraid. I've finally found out who I really am. With all my love, Linda." The soft spring sunlight lit up the flowers in the garden. Now, she could live her life her own way, free, no longer hidden or silenced by anyone. Most importantly, she could share her story. And that was her biggest victory. The dark wooden walls of my father's office felt like they were closing in on me. He picked up his pen and signed the last page with a dramatic flick of his wrist. The sound of his pen scratching across the paper made me wince. It reminded me of fingernails on a chalkboard. "There," he said, sliding the document across the desk toward me. "It's done. All $5 million will go to Olivia. My name is Linda Davis. I'm 30 years old, and in that moment, I was being pushed aside by my own family again. My sister Olivia stood near the window, pretending not to smile, but I could see it. She was proud, happy even, that she was getting everything. "Linda," my mother said with a tired sigh from her seat in a big leather chair. "If only you had gone to law school like your sister. If you had just tried a little harder." "I did try," I said softly. My father's face darkened when he heard that. "Playing with computers in your apartment is not trying," he said sharply. He stood up, towering over his desk. "Your sister made partner at Milne and Larry at just 33. And what about you? You build websites for small shops and live in a tiny apartment in the city." I wanted to tell them everything. I wanted to say that I wasn't just playing with computers. I was building a tech company, a financial app that could change how people around the world manage their money. I had a big meeting coming up with investors who had already valued my company at $500 million. But I didn't say any of that. Over the years, I had learned one thing for sure. My family only believed what they wanted to believe. You're right, I said instead, standing up straight. I'm clearly a failure. Olivia deserves the money more than I do. Olivia turned around and looked a bit unsure. For just a second, I saw the sister I remembered from when we were kids. The one who shared ice cream with me after tough days at school. The one who used to help me with my math homework. That was before our parents' constant comparisons turned us into quiet rivals. Linda, she began, but I raised my hand to stop her. It's okay, Betty, I said, giving her a small smile. Really? Congratulations on making partner. You've earned it. As I walked toward the door, I didn't feel angry. I felt free. They had made their choice, and now I could finally make mine, without their shadow hanging over me. As I walked toward the door, my mother called out behind me. Will you at least join us for dinner? Your father made a reservation at Le Pavilion to celebrate Olivia's promotion. I paused and turned around to look at them one last time. My father was frowning, clearly still disappointed. My mother sat in her chair with a worried look on her face, one she had worn many times before. Olivia stood by the window. She looked proud, but also a little guilty. The room was filled with awards. There were law degrees on the walls, certificates from the Bar Association, and pictures of Olivia's big career moments.
But there was nothing about me.
No photos. No signs that I had ever been part of their success story. I have a meeting, I said calmly. But enjoy your dinner. As I drove back to the city, I had time to think. The trust fund had never really been about the money, not for me. I already had more than enough money of my own now. What really hurt was what the trust fund meant. When Olivia and I were born, our parents created trust funds for both of us. We were supposed to get them when we turned 34. But there was a rule in the contract. If our parents thought one of us wasn't meeting the family's expectations, they could give that person's share to the other sibling. My phone buzzed with a message from Julie, my chief technology officer. VCs moved the meeting to tomorrow. You ready? I smiled. We had worked so hard on the presentation. More than ready, I texted back. It's time to change the game. When I reached my small apartment, the same one my father had mocked, I kicked off my heels and walked into my home office. On the wall, my screens lit up with live data. We were running a test on our latest version of the system. Numbers scrolled quickly, showing prediction after prediction, each one accurate. Each one proof that we had built something amazing. The thing my father called playing with computers had actually turned into something powerful. We had built ATGN, adaptive trading heuristics, and enhanced neural analytics. It was a system that could predict stock market movements better than any human trader. It used millions of data points to spot patterns no one else could see.
My phone buzzed again.
This time it was Olivia.
I'm sorry about Dad. You know how he is.
The trust fund doesn't really matter to you anyway, right? You're doing fine with your computer stuff. I stared at her message. Even when she was trying to be nice, she still made my work sound small. Thanks, Betty. Enjoy dinner, I replied. Then I turned back to my screens, ready to keep building the future. I opened the pitch deck for tomorrow's meeting with the investors. The numbers were amazing. During our beta test, ATA had done 45% better than the usual trading programs. Some big banks had already started contacting us, hoping to get early access to the technology. A soft sound came from one of my screens. It was a video call from Julie. Her face appeared, but she looked a little tired. Hey, she said. How did it go with your family? About how I thought it would, I said, running a hand through my hair. Dad gave my trust fund to Olivia. They're probably having dinner right now at Le Pavilion to celebrate. Julie shook her head. Their loss. Are you ready to show those investors what real success looks like tomorrow? I pulled up another screen showing ATA's newest test results. Actually, I said, I've been thinking, what if we don't take the investors' money? Julie's eyes widened.
What?
Linda, they're offering $45 million, and the company is worth $500 million already. That's small thinking, I said, cutting in. Look at these numbers, Julie. We don't need their money. We could take this public in a year and keep full control. I smiled, imagining the day of the IPO. the public launch of our company. I could almost see my father's face when he realized what I had built. I want to prove what playing with computers can really do, I said. Julie was quiet for a few seconds, then slowly smiled. You don't just want success. You want to build something big. I want to build something so strong and important, I said, that even my father can't ignore it. I want to change how the entire financial world works. But your dad's a corporate lawyer, Julie said. Wouldn't he already know about ATA if it's this big? I laughed. Julie, my dad still uses a BlackBerry and thinks coding is something you learn at a community college. He doesn't know about ATA because he's never cared enough to ask what I do. His loss, Julie said firmly. So, what's the plan? Cancel the investor meeting? I shook my head, an idea forming in my mind. No, we still go. But instead of asking for money, we ask for partnerships. Let them connect us to banks and financial companies. We don't need their cash. We need their network. 7 months after being cut out of the family trust, I wasn't looking for their approval anymore. I was building something far greater. I stood in our new office in downtown Richmond, watching our team of engineers work on the final tests for Athena. The windows stretched from the floor all the way to the ceiling, giving us a clear view of the financial district. All the big banks and companies we could soon change with our technology were just blocks away. Linda, Julie called from her desk. You need to see this. I walked over to her with my coffee and looked at her screen. The newest test results were even better than we hoped for. Athena wasn't just guessing how the markets would move, it was spotting events that would change the market before they even happened. Is this real? I asked, leaning in closer to look at the data. Julie nodded, her eyes glowing with excitement. We triple-checked it. Athena found patterns in social media, news stories, and how people were trading. It predicted the Morgan Stanley merger 4 days before it was announced. If this had been real trading instead of a test, I said, we would have made billions. Have you shown this to the compliance team? I asked. That's the best part, Julie said, bringing up another screen. It's all legal. Athena doesn't use insider info. It's just better at putting together public data than any person could ever be. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Hey sis, haven't heard from you in months. Parents are worried. Dad says your number at the apartment isn't working. I smiled a little. Of course, it wasn't working. We had moved months ago to a brand new office that cost $120 million, just 7 blocks from One Wall Street. But my family still thought I was in a small apartment, playing with computers. I'm fine, just busy with work, I replied. Another message buzzed in, this time from Jacob, our head of legal. SEC meeting confirmed for next week. They're very interested in our compliance process. He was being modest. When people heard that we were building something new in the fintech world, the SEC had rushed to meet us. They wanted to learn how Athena worked before it went public. It was a smart move on their part. Miss Davis, our receptionist said through the intercom, there's a Mr. Milne here to see you. He says he's from Milne and Larry. My heart skipped a beat. That was Olivia's law firm, one of the biggest in the city. Send him in, I said, straightening my blazer. Adam Milne, the senior partner himself, walked in. He looked exactly like the kind of lawyer my father respected, silver hair, a perfect suit, and the kind of confidence that comes with old money. Miss Davis, he said, reaching out to shake my hand. Thank you for meeting with me on short notice. I hope you don't mind the surprise visit, Mr. Milne said. But when we started hearing rumors about what you're building here... You heard rumors? I asked, motioning for him to take a seat. From who? He gave a polite smile. Let's just say some big financial companies are very interested in your technology. They're our clients, and they asked us to look into possible partnerships. Does my sister know you're here? His smile faded just a little. Olivia?
No.
This meeting is private. Though I was surprised to find out you're her sister. She's never mentioned that she has a sister who plays with computers. I finished for him. I'm not surprised. I doubt she talks about me much at all. Just then, Julie showed up in the doorway holding a tablet. Linda, sorry to interrupt, but the Goldman Sachs team is here for their demo. At the mention of Goldman Sachs, Mr. Milne raised his eyebrows. I could almost see the gears turning in his head as he started to realize I might be more important than he thought. I stood up. Mr. Milne, I'm afraid I have another meeting now. If you want to talk more about partnerships, you can reach out to our legal team to schedule something. Of course, he said, also standing. But Miss Davis, whatever Goldman is offering, we can match it. Our firm represents half of the major financial players in the city. I walked him to the door with a calm smile. It's not about the money, Mr. Milne. It's about changing the game completely. I think you understand. After he left, Julie gave me a knowing look. You enjoyed that, didn't you? Maybe a little, I said with a smile. How long do you think it'll take him to tell Olivia about what we're doing here? Considering her firm works with billions of dollars in clients, I said, probably 7 minutes. Sure enough, my phone buzzed a few minutes later. A text from Olivia. Linda, why didn't you tell me? Patrick Milne just came back from your office, looking like he saw a ghost. What are you working on? I put my phone away without replying. There would be time to talk to my family later. Right now, we had a big meeting to focus on. The Goldman Sachs team was already waiting in the conference room. 5 executives in sharp suits, trying not to look too excited. Just having them here was a huge win. If we could get Goldman as an early partner, it would open every door in the financial world. I stepped into the room and greeted them with confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, standing at the front of the table. What you're about to see will completely change how the stock market works. But first, I need you all to sign these NDAs. On the morning of our company's IPO, I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting my suit. It was Chanel, not that my parents would know the difference. The One Wall Street Journal lay on my desk. Our company's big launch was on the front page. ATA set to launch, biggest tech IPO of the year. Expected valuation, $1,000 million. My phone had been ringing and buzzing for days. First it was Olivia, then my mom, and finally, even my dad had tried to reach me. I hadn't replied to any of their messages. They would all be at the ceremony today, anyway. Invitations had been sent out weeks ago. You ready for this? Julie asked, standing in my office doorway. She had swapped her usual jeans and t-shirt for a sharp business suit. Born ready, I said, picking up my presentation folder. How's ATA doing this morning? Perfect, Julie said with a smile. She's predicting market moves with 99.9% accuracy. The training traders is buzzing. People know this is going to change everything. We left for the stock exchange. A crowd had already gathered outside. Reporters were everywhere. Cameras flashed as we walked past. I heard bits of what they were saying. Youngest female CEO to take a company public. This tech will change the future of finance. Already partnering with top banks. Inside, the building was full of energy. Our team stood near the podium. Representatives from all the major banks and financial firms were there too. And in the front row sat my family. My father's face was hard to read, proud, but also full of regret. He looked confused, maybe even shocked. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. And Olivia just stared at me like she was finally seeing who I really was. Linda, my father said as I walked past. He stepped forward. We had no idea. No, I said quietly. You didn't. Because you never asked. Before he could say anything else, the president of the stock exchange called me to the stage. It was time to begin the ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, I started again, this time from the podium, this time speaking to the world. I began to speak, my voice filling the now silent trading floor. 4 years ago, I started building ATA in a small apartment. People said I was just playing with computers. They told me I was wasting my talent. But what they didn't see was that I was building the future. I looked at my father as I continued. Today, ATA can process more financial data in 1 second than all of One Wall Street can look at in a whole month. She predicts market changes with almost perfect accuracy. And she does all of it while staying within the rules, legal and ethical. I paused before going on. But more important than that, ATA is proof of what can happen when you believe in your own idea. even when nobody else does. The ceremony continued as planned. There were speeches, handshakes, and finally, the ringing of the bell. But the real moment came when our stock price showed up on the big screen. The room exploded with cheers as the numbers climbed higher than anyone expected. By the time the stock launched, my share of the company was worth over $500 million, more than 50 times the value of the trust funds my father had taken away from me. After the ceremony, my family walked over, unsure of what to say. Olivia spoke first. "Linda, I'm so sorry," she said, no longer hiding her emotions. "All this time, when you tried to tell us about your work." "Save it," I said gently. "You all believed what you wanted to believe." My father cleared his throat. "About the trust fund. Keep it," I said before he could finish. "Olivia earned it. Just like I earned this." Sometimes, when people expect you to fail, it pushes you to work harder. And that makes success feel even better. "But we're family," my mother said quietly. "We should have supported you." I looked at Julie and our team, the people who believed in me when ATNA was nothing but code on a screen. "You're right," I said. "We are family, which is why you're all invited to dinner tonight. I've reserved the private room at Le Pavilion. I hear it's a great place to celebrate success." My father blinked at the name, the same restaurant where they once celebrated giving my trust fund to Olivia. But this time, he managed a small smile. "We'd be honored." That evening, as my family enjoyed the meal, surrounded by our technology and team, I thought about the long journey that brought me here, the late nights coding, the doubt, the silence from my family, and how all of it had led to this moment. And this time, they finally saw what I had built. They thought I was wasting time. The meetings they laughed off as me playing with computers, the success they tried to hand to someone else. None of it mattered now. My phone buzzed. A message from Julie. "Stock closed at double our expected price. You're officially a billionaire." I smiled as I pictured my father trying to explain to his country club friends how his disappointing daughter had built a billion-dollar company right under his nose. What I had learned was this: success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were right all along. "Linda," Olivia said, pulling me aside, "I need to tell you something. After Patrick Milne came back from your office that day, I started researching everything about ATNA. I even bought stock in every company showing interest in your technology." She looked at me, serious now. "I believed in you, even if I didn't say it." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you make any money?" She smiled wide. "Enough to pay back that trust fund 10 times over." "Good," I said. "Because I need a lawyer I can trust for our next expansion. Someone who understands both tech and family." Her eyes went wide. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance to be part of something bigger than both of us," I said. "So what do you say, sis? Ready to play with computers?" The next morning, I walked into our new building, now officially named the Central Park Tower. In the lobby, I passed a young intern sitting with a laptop, working on code during her break. She reminded me of myself, back when everyone thought I was wasting my time. "Keep going," I told her with a smile. "Some of the biggest success stories start in the smallest apartments." She looked up, her eyes lighting up as she recognized me. "Miss Davis, I've read about how you built ATNA. My parents think I'm crazy for choosing programming instead of law school." "But you have a vision," I said, finishing her thought. "Hold on to that. The people who doubt you today will be reading about you tomorrow." As I rode the elevator up to my office, I thought about what legacy really means. Not the kind my father tried to pass down. The real kind, the one you build with your own hands, one step at a time. ATNA wasn't just changing how money moved. It was changing how people see success. Because sometimes, the best inheritance isn't something you're given. It's something you build line by line, on your own terms.
After my dad's funeral, while everyone was discussing how to divide his money in stocks, my brother-in-law, married to my sister Lauren, suddenly claimed that Lauren should get everything, including $10 million, because she was the oldest sibling. They were happy about this, but the lawyer told them they couldn't decide that on their own. My name is Adam Smith. I'm 43 years old, work in sales, and have a wife and 3 kids. My dad owned a large part of a company and kept working even though he was old. My sister Lauren, who is older than me, has always been a troublemaker for our parents with her bad behavior. Now in her middle years, she still doesn't have a steady job and lives as she pleases. I never liked her much, so I kept my distance. When Lauren turned 52, she suddenly announced she was getting married to a younger guy named Henry Cavill. Henry is good-looking but lazy and unpleasant. Lauren started asking Dad for money for the wedding and spent it quickly, then asked for more, which upset Dad. She assumed she would inherit everything eventually. Less than a year after her marriage, Dad had a heart attack while playing golf and passed away a few days later. His death hit me hard, and I felt very sad. His friends were shocked, and our phones didn't stop ringing with condolences. Despite my grief, I helped my stunned mom with all the funeral arrangements because, as usual, Lauren was nowhere to be found. After the funeral, Mom and I finally got a chance to rest, but the next day, a lawyer came to talk about Dad's will. Mom and I already knew about it. Mom and I already knew what was in the will, but my sister and her husband barged in without any idea and made a shocking claim. They said all of Dad's stocks and the $10 million inheritance would go to Lauren, the oldest daughter, and that everyone else should back off. Mom and I were speechless at their nerve. My brother-in-law cheered. "We did it, Lauren. Now we're set for life," as he fist-pumped with joy. The lawyer, looking surprised, interrupted. "Hold on a minute." My sister glared at him, but he gave her a stern look and said, "Lauren, you're not entitled to any inheritance." My sister and her husband were stunned and protested, saying, "That can't be right. Lauren is the oldest daughter. She should get everything." It was clear my brother-in-law had been counting on that inheritance. The lawyer then revealed, "Did you not know? Lauren is not Mr. Smith's biological child." Suddenly, my sister's face turned pale, and she looked at our mother. Mom wore a complex expression. I had always known Lauren was a half-sibling, but it seemed she had been kept in the dark. Lauren, almost frantic, shook our mother, demanding, "Mom, what does this mean?" "Lauren, you're from my previous marriage," our mother muttered, shaken by Lauren's grip. Lauren, who had often teased me about being the favorite child, now looked stunned. Her husband interjected, "But as she was legally adopted, she should still have inheritance rights, right?" Lauren agreed, "Yes, that's what I thought." Our mother shook her head, explaining there had been no legal adoption. Both my sister and her husband were incredulous. "That can't be. I'm the oldest daughter. Even Dad said so," Lauren argued. Then, turning her anger towards me, she snapped, "I'm not letting you take everything." I responded, irritated by her entitlement. "After all the support Dad gave you, you still say that. Be quiet. I'm his rightful heir." My sister and her husband protested, but I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. While it's normal for parents to support their children, you have been using Dad's money to settle debts and deal with various troubles. Our mother suggested, "Why don't we let Lauren see the will too?" Lauren panicked. "I have no idea about that. It was her own fault for not paying attention when Dad wanted us all to discuss the will's contents. She had brushed it off and went out instead." When I pointed this out, my brother-in-law gave Lauren a fierce glare. "What were you thinking?" This was important. Faced with the situation, they agreed to listen. The lawyer then revealed Dad's will, which stated clearly that the inheritance was for me and Mom. It also explained that Dad had initially planned to adopt my sister, but changed his mind due to her behavior and reckless spending. Realizing she had no inheritance rights, my sister was stunned. "Darn it, what now?" she muttered. Suddenly, My brother-in-law raised his voice. "You lied to me. You said you had money." His demeanor turned aggressive, shocking both my mother and sister, but not me. I had seen his greed before. He might have married Lauren for her money. "Lauren, don't come back until you've got some money," he commanded. "Wait, Henry, what do you mean? I thought I was going to be wealthy. What a letdown," he snapped, pushing past her and storming out of the room. Left behind, my sister glared at us, angry and upset. "Mom, why didn't you have me adopted? It's not fair that only you get the inheritance. I should have gotten something too, but you didn't handle it right. This is awful," she cried, making a scene. I was taken aback by her outburst, but the lawyer seemed unfazed, maybe used to such drama. "Why does he get everything?" she yelled. "Because I'm Dad's son," I replied. Her eyes filled with anger as she lunged at me, shouting, "It would have been better if you were never born." I thought to myself that even if I hadn't existed, Dad would likely have made the same decision given her character. Before I could say anything, the lawyer calmly intervened. "Lauren, if you continue like this, it will involve the police." My sister flinched, possibly recalling her past shoplifting incidents. "Lauren," our mother called out, tears in her eyes. 5 months later, the inheritance proceedings went smoothly. Though my sister and brother-in-law grumbled for a bit, the lawyer's efficient management left them no room to interfere. My mother gave my sister some money, but I refrained from commenting on it. What bothered me most was their sudden disappearance with the funds, displaying their blatant gold-digging behavior. This left a sour taste in the mouths of our relatives who knew the situation. Took my mother, wife, and daughter out for a meal. Thanks to my wife's suggestion, my mother, who had been somewhat withdrawn since Dad's passing, seemed more cheerful around her adorable granddaughter. "Hey, Mom, why don't you come live with us?" I proposed. "But you know, Lauren might drop by sometimes. She only shows up when she needs money, right? Don't be too accommodating with her." My mother hesitated. Understandable, since Lauren is her biological daughter. Plus, if our family moved into the family home, Lauren might cause trouble again. Respecting her concerns, I asked her to think it over as I drove towards the family home to drop her off. As we pulled up, we noticed lights on in the supposedly empty house. It wasn't time for the helper to be there, so maybe my sister had returned. With that in mind, I parked the car in the garage. "Let's pop in for a quick coffee," I suggested. As we stepped out of the car and headed towards the entrance, a car suddenly swerved towards us, narrowly missing us. Reacting to my daughter's cry, I instinctively shielded my wife. Ouch! Thankfully, the car only grazed me, but I was thrown into a nearby flower bed, taking a hard knock. The car came to a halt after hitting the garage entrance. "Are you all right, honey?" My wife and daughter rushed over to help me up while my mother stood trembling at the entrance, understandably shaken. Panic ensued. I was rushed to the hospital by ambulance and had to stay overnight. Later, I learned that the driver was Henry Cavill, my brother-in-law. He claimed to the police that he mistook the accelerator for the brake, but I doubted his explanation. When my mother and sister visited me in the hospital, my sister looked at me coldly and remarked, "You're surprisingly resilient, aren't you?" I couldn't help but think that if I had been seriously injured, my mother would have inherited everything. "Too bad for you," I said with a smirk. My sister visibly tensed. "You were counting on it, weren't you?" I noticed her discomfort as she looked away. "Well, Mom told me she plans to waive her inheritance for me, so causing such an accident was pointless." My sister seemed taken aback by this revelation. It appeared incomprehensible to her that someone would refuse what they could inherit. "I have a wife and kids, so Mom asked me to pass it on to them. That's what parents do." "But," my sister stuttered. "Even made a will early on, following Dad's example." This left my sister speechless. So, unfortunately, my share won't be going to Mom anymore, I said. My sister trembled as she stared at me. Can't you at least give me some? There's $10 million, right? When I firmly refused, my sister's face twisted with anger as she grabbed my collar. Give me half. I'm your sister. I looked at her with pity as she continued to scream, driven by greed. Don't you realize that your greed would disappoint Dad? Her face flushed with anger as she reached for my throat. Lauren, what are you doing? My mother shouted, returning just as nurses arrived to escort my sister out. My mother seemed inclined to defend her, but it was clear my sister had also insulted her. Where did I go wrong in raising her? Mom said, sadness in her voice. Shortly after, my mother fell ill. As her condition worsened, my wife and I helped with transportation and household tasks at the family home. This upset my sister, likely because she encountered my wife during her visits to ask for money or heard about our help from our mother. One day, my sister called me abruptly. From now on, we'll take care of Mom. You two don't need to come, she declared. What's this all about? I tried to reason with her, but she hung up, claiming it was already decided. I confirmed with my wife, who had received the same message and been dismissed. Concerned about my sister's lack of experience in caregiving or household duties, I quickly reached out to my mother. Surprisingly, my brother-in-law had some caregiving experience. At that point, my mother was still quite independent, so it seemed manageable for the time being. I felt a bit relieved. However, within a month, my mother was rushed to the hospital by ambulance due to a medication dosage error. She appeared alarmingly frail when we arrived. The doctor was puzzled. My mother had never made such a mistake before. While my wife stayed with her, I went back to the family home, which was in Desiree. The fridge was empty despite my mother's love for cooking, and it seemed the hired help had been canceled without discussion. I felt ashamed for even considering trusting my sister and was furious. A significant amount of money had been withdrawn from my mother's bank account, even though her bank card and PIN were secured in the safe. Thankfully, the inheritance account was untouched in a safe deposit box, but most of the funds for living expenses were gone. I gathered essential items for my mother's hospital stay, including her bank card, and returned to explain the situation to her. "Dear Lauren," I started. My mother seemed unaware of the bank card situation. When I asked about the medication error, she looked somber and confessed that my brother-in-law had prepared it. "Mom, maybe it's best not to allow my sister into the house anymore," I suggested. "Adam, I promised to take care of you, but the house is in such disarray, and you've lost so much weight. Have you been eating properly?" My mother's words weighed heavily on me. "Mom, you should come live with us. I'll build a home where we can all be together," I proposed, causing my mother to break down in tears. Despite the doctor's efforts, her health continued to deteriorate. The incident with my sister had likely weakened her heart, and she never recovered. She eventually passed away, almost as if following my father. Upon returning to the family home to make funeral arrangements, I discovered that all the valuables were gone. It appeared my sister and brother-in-law had taken them in their desperate pursuit of money. Standing amidst the empty rooms, I was first shocked and then consumed by a fierce anger. I vowed to hold them accountable for their actions. The day after my mother's funeral, my sister and I were scheduled to meet with the lawyer, presumably to discuss the inheritance. "Too bad, Mom's inheritance rightfully belongs to me, her daughter," my sister boldly declared. I couldn't help but chuckle at her statement, as it seemed she was gravely mistaken. "Let's see what the will says," I suggested. As the lawyer unveiled the will, my sister's face drained of color. "No, this can't be. Lauren is not entitled to inherit anything. That's Dad's final wish." My brother-in-law exploded in anger, sweeping items off the table. "This is absurd. Lauren is that old woman's biological child," he argued. "You can't deceive us. Give us the inheritance now." "Henry, did you try to harm my mom?" I confronted him. He shot me an irritated glare. "What?" "I never did such a thing," he retorted. "Then why was there a mistake with her medication?" I asked. Pressed further, and my brother-in-law scowled in annoyance. "Who cares about that, Adam? It's outrageous that we're not getting any inheritance." My sister, losing her composure, interjected, "What have you done?" I was stunned. It seemed she hadn't come rushing after hearing about our mother's passing, but was counting on the inheritance to cover her expenses. "Tell me this isn't true." "I'm getting nothing," my sister demanded of the lawyer. The lawyer began explaining the legal distribution of the inheritance. However, after deducting the amount my sister had withdrawn and the items she had sold, there was almost nothing left. She scratched her head in frustration. This outcome was reached after consulting with the lawyer in advance. I said, "That can't be. It can't be this little," my sister muttered to herself, clearly dissatisfied. Having relied on our parents without ever experiencing the hardships of work, she seemed out of touch with reality. I couldn't contain my contempt. "Mom thought you'd take care of her, but you just took her money and abandoned her. You ungrateful person." I couldn't hold back my anger. "Taking care of someone costs money, you know." "What are you talking about?" My sister shot back. "Then show me the detailed expenses you used for Mom's living costs. I'll cover the necessary expenses." I challenged her, extending my hand. My sister's face paled, and her lips trembled. I don't have that. Without receipts, it won't be recognized," the lawyer emphasized, leaving my sister speechless. Facing her, my brother-in-law attempted to sway me with a pleading tone. "Adam, your sister really needs help. Can't you lend her a hand, even just a little?" I declined firmly, feeling my frustration growing. It seemed my brother-in-law was reaching his limit too. If everything had gone as planned, Lauren would have had the entire inheritance by now, he muttered. "What do you mean by that?" I questioned, but before I could delve deeper, my brother-in-law let slip, "Because of this guy, nothing ever goes smoothly. I was supposed to get a new car, but all I got was barely enough for repairs." My sister desperately tried to interject, but it was too late. "That's a serious accusation. It sounds like fraud," the lawyer remarked, holding her ground and smiling at the couple. "What? That's illegal. I clearly stated at the outset that this meeting would be recorded, and you both agreed to it," my brother-in-law stammered, realizing his mistake. Declared, "Henry, I'll be pressing charges for that accident." "Don't be absurd. There's no evidence," he retorted, trying to dismiss my accusation. "You've just provided the evidence yourself," I replied confidently. My sister burst into tears, shaking my brother-in-law in frustration. "You fool! It's all your fault. What are we going to do now?" Eventually, my brother-in-law faced criminal charges. His previous offenses also came to light, leading to his arrest by the police. My sister, implicated as an accomplice, received a lesser sentence. Unable to afford her rent, she sought help from relatives, but everyone turned her away. Her desperation grew, and she found herself isolated and struggling. I continued to work diligently without relying on any inheritance. My job in sales provided a stable income, and I took pride in supporting my family through my own efforts. Despite the tumultuous events, I found solace in the dividends from Dad's stocks, which provided a small but consistent source of additional income. My mother's passing had been a heavy blow, but I focused on building a strong, loving home for my wife and children. We moved forward together, finding strength in each other. The memories of my parents and the lessons they taught me guided my actions and decisions. Though my sister and brother-in-law's actions had caused turmoil, I chose to rise above the chaos. I invested wisely, saved diligently, and ensured my family's well-being. The hard-earned stability and the small pleasures of life, like the dividends from the stocks, were my rewards for perseverance and integrity. In the end, I knew that my father would be proud of how I handled the situation. The inheritance was not just about money. It was about upholding the values he instilled in me. I took comfort in knowing that I had honored his legacy through my actions.
Hey, I'm Mary. My life has been quite a ride, like ripping off a band-aid. Quick, a bit painful, and mostly forgettable. If you've got a minute, grab a seat. I've got a story that might make you feel better about your own crazy family. Let's start with my so-called family. Picture a cute little house with a white picket fence, a backyard barbecue, and a dog named Buster who's missing some fur. That's where the picture-perfect image ends. Inside that house was my big sister Linda, the queen bee. Then there was me, just buzzing around like a worker bee, barely noticed. I've got to give it to Linda. She knew how to work the system. She was blonde, had a smile that could light up a room, and a way with words that made our parents melt. She got everything: shiny new bike, last slice of pizza, and even the cozy sweater I wanted for Christmas. Yep, that went to Linda too. When she turned on the charm, it was game over. "Mom, Dad, can I please get that dress for prom?" she'd ask, batting her eyes, and they fell for it every time. Meanwhile, I got the leftovers and hand-me-downs. But don't get me wrong, I wasn't starving or anything. I had clothes and a roof over my head, but life wasn't exactly handing me any silver spoons. Now, about my folks, Dad had a job that left him with grease under his nails and a tired smile. Mom was a wizard in the kitchen and could sniff out nonsense unless it came from Linda. When Linda got into that fancy college with the big lawns and ivy-covered walls, it was like Christmas came early and stayed forever. Mom and Dad threw a party that could wake the dead. But by the time I started thinking about my own future, the excitement was long gone. Suddenly, it was all, money's tight, Mary, and real life's about making sacrifices, you know. I remember when they told me the news. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg. Dad was scratching the back of his neck, a sure sign he didn't want to talk about it. "Mary, we've been looking at the numbers, and it's not looking good," he said. "You've got to be realistic, Mary," Mom added, even though she was just stirring her coffee that didn't need it. "College isn't cheap. Maybe it's time to think about getting a job, you know, to help out a bit." The way they avoided saying it straight, you'd think they were telling me Buster ran away to join the circus instead of just saying my dreams were too expensive. So there I was, not even 20, facing the fact that college wasn't in the cards. But I wasn't going to give up. My plan was simple. Work hard, save every penny, and one day, I'd make it to that courtroom with a SQ after my name. The jobs I took weren't anything special. By day, I was serving coffee and dodging crumbs, and by night, I was up to my elbows in soap, washing dishes at a rundown diner. "You've got to be the hardest working person I know, Mary," Karen said one night in our small, dingy kitchen. She was a freelance graphic designer with a laugh that could light up the whole block. "Yeah," Donna agreed, while tuning her bass guitar, getting ready for a gig. "If anyone can do this, it's you." Their words were like a pat on the back, keeping me going. Everything was on track, maybe a bit behind schedule, but what's life without a few delays, right? Then, out of nowhere, it all fell apart. I woke up one morning thinking I had the flu, but it turned out to be something much worse. Long story short, I ended up in the hospital with a stack of medical bills as thick as an encyclopedia. "Miss Mary, your insurance covered some of it," said the lady in billing, with a voice that always seemed to carry bad news. "But you still owe quite a bit," she said, sliding a bill across the desk that made my heart sink. There went my college savings, swallowed up by numbers and decimal points I couldn't even understand. I tried to ask for a payment plan or something, but I had nothing left to give. I told her how much I just wanted to crawl into a hole and give up. "It's not personal, hon, it's just the system," she said, but it sure felt personal to me. Back at our apartment, the mood was as stale as the pizza we'd left out overnight. "There go the textbooks," I muttered, flipping through pages of legal terms I still hadn't memorized. We sat there, two dreams on hold, trapped in the harsh reality of our cramped living space. "What next?" Donna asked after a long, uncomfortable silence. I didn't have an answer, just a bunch of questions swirling in my head. It felt like I was back at square one, but somehow even further behind than when I started. "Start over," I finally said. "What else can I do? I'm not the type to give up." It sounded confident, but even I could hear the tremble in my voice. They both nodded, but the worry was written all over their faces. "Yeah, I get it, our place is too crowded," I whispered into the phone, the words bitter as they left my mouth. Mom couldn't see me swallow the lump in my throat or the way my hand shook. "You're tough, Mary. You'll figure it out," Dad said before handing the phone back to Mom. The bench at the bus stop was hard against my back as I sat there, trying to figure out my next move while people rushed past me. Linda, with her new baby and picture-perfect life, didn't even come to the phone, probably didn't want to catch my bad luck through the line. "Family, right?" the guy sitting next to me said, catching the end of my call. He was wearing an old jacket and had a 6 o'clock shadow at 8 in the morning. "Yeah, family," I echoed, not really in the mood to talk, but somehow it felt comforting to speak to a stranger. "Hey, don't let it get you down. You look like you've got some fight in you," he said, crinkling the paper bag in his hand. I managed a half smile. "Got any tips for sleeping on one of these benches?" I joked, but the humor didn't quite reach my eyes. He looked over, squinting at the bench like he was sizing it up. "Buses run all night. Ride them end to end. Safer than a bench," he said, his words hanging in the air as my phone buzzed with a low battery warning. Great, another thing to add to today's list of problems. The bus hissed as it pulled up in front of us, its doors opening wide, inviting us to go wherever it was heading. The guy got on, finding a seat among the tired faces of nighttime commuters. I stayed behind, gripping my bus fare tight in my fist, not ready to just ride around aimlessly. I pulled my suitcase and started walking, the wheels making a lonely sound on the sidewalk. The streetlights flickered above me, and in that shaky light, I made a silent promise. This isn't how my story ends. Holding on to that thought, I walked through the night. Every step was a refusal to give up, every breath a promise that I'd fight my way out of this. "Come on over, kid." Aunt Laura's voice came through the phone, steadying me like a lifeline. I never thought I'd be so happy to hear her raspy tone. When I got to her place, she didn't waste time with small talk. "You look like hell," was her greeting as she guided me inside, her hand firm on my back. I spent the first few days in her guest room, trying to pull myself together. She didn't push me to talk, she wasn't the type for cozy heart-to-hearts, but I could tell she was waiting for me to open up. Finally, as we sat at her cluttered kitchen table, surrounded by plants as tough as she was, Aunt Laura set down her mug and looked at me with those piercing eyes. "What do you want, Mary? Really want?" Her question made me nervous, like I was on one of those makeovers shows about to reveal the new me. But I was too tired to dodge the truth. "I want to be a lawyer, Aunt Laura," I said, my voice edged with desperation I couldn't hide. She nodded like she already knew. "If that's the case," she said, tapping her fingers on the table, the sound mixing with the ticking of the wall clock, "I'll pay for your education." My heart jumped, flooded with a sudden rush of hope. "Are you serious?" "As serious as a heart attack," she replied, but then raised a finger, her condition clear. "But you keep your grades up, no slacking." Her tone was stern, but there was a spark in her eyes that told me she believed in me. I couldn't stop the grin that spread across my face. "Really?" I asked, almost in disbelief. "Really?" I didn't save all my money just to blow it on bingo and whiskey, she said. I stood up and hugged her tight, the words, "thank you," getting caught between us. None of that mushy stuff, she grumbled, but she patted my back before pulling away. And you're going to work for me part-time. I need more help around here than I like to admit. What kind of work? I asked. I was eager, ready to do whatever needed to be done. The kind that needs doing, she said vaguely, waving her hand like it was no big deal. We'll start with that mess you call a room and move on to the yard tomorrow. I laughed a real hearty laugh, something I hadn't done in a long time. Deal. Don't think I'm just being nice, Aunt Laura warned. If you slack off, the deal's off. I shook my head, the seriousness of her words sinking in. It won't happen. She looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. Good. Now help me with these damn plants. They've got a better social life than I do. I spent the rest of the day covered in soil, pruning and watering, but the dirt never felt so good on my hands. Aunt Laura made me work for every penny she was offering, and that was fine by me. College wasn't easy. Aunt Laura had given me a big break, but balancing school and bills was like juggling knives. One slip, and it could hurt. I'd wake up in the mornings after cramming for civil procedure, my alarm buzzing like a bee trapped in a jar, books spread out on the desk like a buffet I didn't want to touch. When my stomach reminded me I needed to eat, I'd head to the nearest food spot on campus. Maria, who worked the counter, would always give me a knowing look. Make it a double? Long night ahead? She'd ask. Yeah, I'd say, grabbing the coffee and sandwich. You're going to burn out if you keep this up, Maria would warn. Can't burn out when you're on fire, I'd joke, even though I felt more like I was burning out than blazing. Nights blurred into a mix of flashcards and frayed nerves. Every time my phone buzzed, it was either a bill reminder or a message from Aunt Laura asking how my day was. I always told her it was better than it actually was. Then everything changed overnight. Aunt Laura got really sick, life-threatening sick. I held her hand more times than I could count in that too-quiet hospital room. There wasn't much to say. What do you say when the person who's been your rock is fading away? Who's going to yell at me for eating cookies in bed when you're gone? I tried to joke during one of those visits, trying to keep things light. You better not, she whispered, her voice barely there. Crumbs everywhere. We never talked about the money. It was like an unspoken agreement, the elephant in the room no one wanted to mention. After she passed, I found myself in a stiff lawyer's office, more nervous than I'd ever been. I was more nervous than I'd ever been for any exam, sitting there with a lawyer, a stiff man with a comb-over and glasses slipping down his nose. She left you the house, Mary, he said. It was like Aunt Laura was still looking out for me. She what? I blinked, my mind coming to a halt. The house, he repeated, fiddling with some papers. And a considerable amount to cover your student debts. The rest is up to you to figure out. Laura was clear about you making your own way. Despite the lump in my throat, I asked, did she say anything else? He adjusted his glasses. She said she believed in you and that she'd haunt you if you gave up. I laughed through my tears. That was so like Aunt Laura. As I left the office that day, I felt both heavier and lighter. She'd given me more than just a house. She'd given me her belief that I could finish this journey, even without her. I was deep into studying for my next big exam when I heard a knock, 3 sharp raps that told me this wasn't going to be a friendly visit. I opened the front door of Aunt Laura's my house, and there they were. Mom, Dad, Linda, and her husband Adam, like some grim family reunion. Linda didn't waste any time. Mary, look at us all together again in this big house, she said, her tone dripping with fake cheer. Like a twisted sitcom, isn't it? I replied, leaning against the doorframe. Dad spoke in that tone that always meant he expected me to just listen. We've been talking. We think this house should be for Linda. She's got kids, a family, he said. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Seriously? I replied, heavy sarcasm in my voice. Wrong house for that conversation. Mom's lips tightened, a sign she was gearing up for a guilt trip. You'll understand when you have your own family. It's just practical. I must have missed the part where practical meant kicking me out of my own home. I shot back, crossing my arms. Linda batted her eyelashes at me, then looked to Adam for support. He just shrugged. This house is wasted on you. We could fill it with laughter, children running around. And what, turn Aunt Laura's parlor into a playroom? The idea tasted like acid in my mouth. There's no need to be rude, Adam mumbled, finally finding his voice. Right, because showing up to claim my house is the height of good manners, I snapped back. You're being selfish, Mary, Dad grunted, sure he was right. I let out a bitter laugh. Selfish. After all those years of barely remembering her with a birthday card? Convenient memory you've got there. They shifted uncomfortably, not expecting their plan to go this way. Linda, predictably, broke the silence. You can be such a... she started, but I cut her off. Don't. Just leave. As they walked out the door, burdened by their disbelief and entitlement, Dad turned to me and said, You'll regret this. I stood tall, looking him straight in the eye. The only thing I'll regret is not changing the lock sooner. The door closed behind them, leaving me in the quiet. Inheritance or not, I was holding on to Aunt Laura's legacy, not selling it off to the highest bidder in my family. I was exhausted, the kind of tired that sticks to your bones. After a double shift at the law firm, all I wanted was a hot shower and my bed. But when I tried to unlock the door, the key just scraped against metal. What the? I muttered, fiddling with the key. That's when the door swung open, and there stood Linda, holding little Amy on her hip, a smug look on her face. Changed the locks, Mary. Surprise, she said. My eyebrows shot up. Like hell you did. This is my house. She smirked. Not anymore, she replied, bouncing Amy, who seemed blissfully unaware of the drama. Anger bubbled up inside me. Watch me, I said, already dialing. Her smirk wavered. As the dispatcher answered, Linda's confidence slipped. Yes, my sister has illegally entered and changed the locks on my house, I said loudly into the phone. Just then, Dad's truck pulled into the driveway, with Mom by his side, looking like they were staging an intervention. Mary, be reasonable, Mom started, her eyes wet like she was in some soap opera. I'm past reasonable, I replied, not hiding the edge in my voice. Adam, a good foot taller than me, stepped up, trying to look intimidating. Come on, Mary, he said in a low voice. Don't make a scene. I held up my phone, the recording button clearly visible. Say that again, Adam, for the camera, I insisted. His face turned pale. Sirens cut through the tension as a cop car pulled up. The officer stepped out, all serious looks and business. What seems to be the problem here? One asked. Their bravado crumbled like stale bread. Dad's voice lost its strength. It's a misunderstanding, officers. Family matter. Stealing my house is a bit more than a family matter, I replied, my voice steady. I crossed my arms as I spoke. The officers looked between us, taking in the situation, clearly experienced in handling this kind of thing. All right, let's start with some ID, and we'll go from there, one of them said, pulling out a notepad. Linda reluctantly handed Amy to Mom and dug into her purse. The legal process had begun. They asked questions, and we gave answers. Dad and Mom tried to put on a show, but the deed to the house was in my name, signed and sealed by Aunt Laura's will. Can you prove you live here, ma'am? The officer asked me. Better I can prove I own it, I replied, reaching for my briefcase in the car. Seeing Aunt Laura's will felt like the first real breath I'd taken since this all started. The officers read through it, their eyebrows rising and falling as they absorbed the legal details. "Seems clear to us," one officer said, folding the papers back into the briefcase. "I suggest you hand over a set of keys to Miss here, or we'll have to proceed with charges for breaking and entering and unlawful eviction." Linda reluctantly handed over a set of keys. Mom and Dad went silent, and Adam looked like he wished the ground would swallow him up. The cops escorted them off the property. Mom gave me a look like I'd kicked her puppy, but the law was the law, no room for sob stories. The door closed behind me with a click, like the final word in an argument. I leaned against it, my hands shaking from the adrenaline rush. I trudged into the kitchen to make a much-needed cup of coffee. As the kettle boiled, I thought about what my next move should be. The solid click of the lock snapping into place felt like the end of a long, bad joke. My house, now a fortress, just needed one more thing to be perfect. "Maybe I'll get a big, nasty dog," I muttered to no one in particular. I wasn't much of a pet person, but the thought of a drooling beast scaring off any unwanted family visits brought a smirk to my face. Weeks passed, and the silence from my family was louder than any argument we'd ever had. No calls, not even a lousy text. Sometimes, late at night, when the work was done and the quiet was too overwhelming, I felt the weight of it all. I often find myself on Linda's social media page. She has a flair for drama, photos of the kids with sad eyes and pouty lips, captions meant to tug at my guilt. "Little Peter wishes he had a yard to play in," or "Amy's third birthday without Auntie Mary." I chuckle every time. Does she think I've forgotten why I stood my ground? Does she expect me to feel sorry? I remember all too well the days when I begged for help with my college fees and got nothing but lectures about responsibility and tough love. I can still feel the cold slam of the door when I was broke and desperate, and they told me they had no room for me. The way my own foundation crumbled beneath me. No, my new life is something I built myself, paying my dues in full, fighting my battles alone. No amount of sad pictures will erase the past they wish I'd forget. I thought about posting a reply once, something snappy and a little mean, but why bother? I had work to do. A stack of files on my desk didn't care about family feuds. I had clients who depended on me, and that's where I chose to focus my energy. Sometimes, late in the evening, I'd pour myself a glass of bourbon and sit in my backyard, the same yard they wanted to take from me. I'd savor the quiet and think about that guard dog again. A big one with a bark that would make my family think twice before stepping onto the porch. Maybe a Rottweiler or a Mastiff, something with some bite. My phone stayed silent, a dead limb I'd long since learned to live without. And when I finally went to bed, I'd sleep soundly, not caring whether I was just or wicked. No ghosts of guilt, no restless thoughts about what might have been, just the peace of knowing that everything around me was mine, earned by me alone. The last thing I'd think about each night was that dog. Maybe I'd get one, maybe I wouldn't. But the choice was mine, and that was good enough for me.